It's an island out in the ocean. Can you see it?
You have to.
I have so many questions.
Kind of man you want to grow up to be, Clark.
Get me. He was convinced that the world.
He's faster than a speeding bullet, stronger than a locomotive, and in 2013, he returned to the big screen in one of the most divisive superhero films ever made. Today on J Cinema Film, we're diving into Zack Snyder's Man of Steel, breaking down what made it soar, where it stumbled, and some facts you probably didn't know about Superman's rebirth for modern cinema. Man of Steel is a superhero film based on the DC character Superman, directed by Zack Snyder and written by David S. Goyer, who developed the story with producer Christopher Nolan. The movie reboots the Superman film series by depicting the character's origin story. The film stars Henry Cavill as Superman, alongside Amy Adams, Michael Shannon, Kevin Costner, Diane Lane, Lawrence Fishburne, and Russell Crowe. It follows Clark Kent as he discovers that he is a superpowered alien from the planet Krypton and embraces his destiny as humanity's protector, ultimately facing General Zod in a battle for Earth's survival. Warner Brothers developed the project as a fresh take on Superman after exploring ideas from comic book writers and filmmakers. The legal landscape around the character's rights also played a role in moving the film forward, while Christopher Nolan and David Goyer's story discussions shaped the direction of the reboot. Zack Snyder was later brought on to direct. Filming took place across several locations, including Illinois and Vancouver, and the movie went on to launch what became known as the DC Extended Universe. The film premiered in New York City before its wide release, earning mixed critical reception but performing strongly at the box office. It grossed hundreds of millions worldwide and ranked among the highest earners of its release year. The story later continued in Batman v Superman, Dawn of Justice, with another reboot of the Superman character arriving in the newly established DC universe. Plot: Krypton faces collapse after the mining of its planetary core. Scientist Jor-El infuses the genetic codex of his people into his newborn son, Kal-El, and, with his wife Lara's help, sends the child to Earth just before General Zod stages a coup and kills him. On Earth, Kal-El is discovered in Kansas and raised as Clark Kent by Jonathan and Martha Kent. As he grows, Clark's powers emerge under Earth's yellow sun, though Jonathan warns him to hide his gifts, even at the cost of his own life. Haunted by guilt, Clark wanders the world searching for purpose. Journalist Lois Lane investigates a Kryptonian scout ship uncovered in the Arctic, where she encounters Clark. Inside, he learns the truth of his origins from an artificial intelligence based on Jor-El. Donning a Kryptonian suit, Clark begins to embrace his identity, while Lois decides to protect his secret after learning of Jonathan's sacrifice. Meanwhile, Zod and his followers escape imprisonment and set their sights on Earth, intending to terraform it into a new Krypton. Captured alongside Lois, Clark is forced to fight back when Zod's forces threaten humanity. With Lois's help and Jor-El's guidance, Clark resists their plan, battling Zod's army and destroying the world engine, which had begun to reshape Earth. The final confrontation between Superman and Zod devastates Metropolis, ending when Superman is forced to kill Zod to save innocent lives. Shaken but resolute, he vows to protect humanity while working under his civilian identity at the Daily Planet as reporter Clark Kent. Cast and crew: Henry Cavill's casting as Kal-El, also known as Clark Kent and Superman, marked a pivotal moment in the reboot of the Superman franchise. As the first non-American actor to portray the iconic character, Cavill brought a fresh perspective to the role that had been dominated by American performers like Christopher Reeve and Brandon Routh. The search for the new Superman was extensive, with director Zack Snyder and producer Christopher Nolan seeking someone who could embody the physicality, vulnerability, and heroism of the character. Cavill, a British actor known for his roles in films like Immortals and the television series The Tudors, emerged as the top choice after a rigorous audition process. He had previously been considered for Superman in earlier projects, including the unproduced Superman, Flyby and Superman Returns, where he lost out to Routh. This history added a layer of destiny to his eventual casting, as if the role had been waiting for him. In interviews, Cavill expressed his deep understanding of the character's complexities. He noted that Superman's story is about exploring multiple identities: Kal-El from Krypton and Clark Kent from Earth, and the loneliness that comes with being unique. "He's alone and there's no one like him," Cavill said, highlighting the emotional depth he aimed to bring. To prepare physically, Cavill underwent an intense training regimen, consuming nearly 5,000 calories a day and training over 2 hours daily to build the muscular physique required for the role. His inspiration drew from classic Superman comics like The Death of Superman, The Return of Superman, Superman, Red Son, and Superman/Batman, The Search for Kryptonite, ensuring his portrayal stayed true to the source material while fitting Snyder's grounded, realistic vision. Other actors considered for Superman included Matthew Good, Armie Hammer, Jamie Dornan, Joe Manganiello, and Colin O'Donoghue. Manganiello, who later played Deathstroke in Justice League, was reportedly Snyder's second choice behind Cavill. The decision to cast Cavill was influenced by his ability to convey both strength and introspection, qualities essential for a film that delved into Superman's origin story with a darker, more contemplative tone. Younger versions of Clark were portrayed by Cooper Timberline as the 9-year-old and Dylan Sprayberry as the 13-year-old, allowing for a seamless depiction of Clark's growth and the challenges of hiding his powers. Amy Adams was selected to play Lois Lane, the intrepid Daily Planet reporter and Superman's love interest, after a competitive casting process that included names like Kristen Stewart, Zoe Saldana+A, Olivia Wilde, and Mila Kunis. Adams, an Academy Award-nominated actress known for her versatile performances in films such as Enchanted and The Fighter, auditioned for Lois 3 times across different Superman projects: once for Superman, Flyby, again for Superman Returns, and finally securing the role in Man of Steel. Snyder praised her ability to capture Lois's multifaceted personality, Smart, tough, funny, warm, ambitious, and beautiful. We did a lot of auditioning, but we had this meeting with Amy Adams and after that I just felt she was perfect for it," Snyder recalled. Adams portrayed Lois as a modern, hands-on journalist in a changing media landscape, emphasizing her independence and festiness. This version of Lois was set in a more identifiable world, where she actively pursues stories rather than waiting for them to come to her. The character's evolution from previous portrayals, like Margot Kidder's in the re-films, was deliberate, aligning with the film's realistic approach. Adams' chemistry with Cavill was crucial, as the relationship forms the emotional core of the story, blending romance with mutual respect. Her performance added depth to scenes where Lois uncovers Clark's secret, choosing to protect him out of understanding Jonathan Kent's sacrifice. Michael Shannon's role as General Zod, the Kryptonian antagonist bent on terraforming Earth into a new Krypton, was a departure from Terrence Stamp's iconic portrayal in Superman 2. Shannon, known for intense roles in films like Revolutionary Road and Boardwalk Empire, was chosen for his ability to project both intelligence and malice. Snyder highlighted Zod's unique position as a villain who shares insights into Superman's heritage, making him a formidable foe on psychological and physical levels. Michael is a powerful actor who can project both the intelligence and the malice of the character, making him perfect for the role, Snyder stated. The decision to feature Zod as the primary villain stemmed from the story's needs, as explained by writer David S. Goyer. Rather than selecting a cool villain arbitrarily, Zod fit the narrative of Superman's origins and the conflict over Krypton's legacy. Actors like Viggo Mortensen and Daniel Day-Lewis were considered, but Shannon's raw intensity won out. His preparation involved understanding Zod's eugenics-driven ideology, drawing parallels to historical figures without overt imitation. Shannon's performance in the film's climactic battles showcased his commitment, using practical effects and wire work to convey the superhuman fights. Kevin Costner and Diane Lane were cast as Jonathan and Martha Kent, Clark's adoptive parents, to ground the film in realism. Costner, an Oscar-winning actor from Dances with Wolves and Field of Dreams, played Jonathan, the farmer who instills values of humility and restraint in Clark. Snyder emphasized the tonal seriousness brought by casting such acclaimed actors. "You sort of get a sense of how tonally we're looking at the movie. Those guys are serious actors, and we're taking this movie very seriously." Costner was drawn to the role's emotional weight, particularly Jonathan's sacrifice during the tornado scene, though he later expressed some disappointment with the script's direction. Lane, known for her roles in Unfaithful and Under the Tuscan Sun, portrayed Martha as a wise, nurturing figure who helps Clark navigate his powers. She was the first actor cast after Cavill, with Snyder noting her ability to convey the wisdom and the wonder of a woman whose son has powers beyond her imagination. The on-screen couple's realism was a priority, reflecting the film's focus on family dynamics and moral guidance. Their performances provided poignant moments, like Jonathan urging Clark to hide his abilities, which shaped Superman's heroism. Lawrence Fishburne became the first African-American actor to play Perry White, the editor-in-chief of the Daily Planet. Fishburne, celebrated for roles in The Matrix and Boys and the Hood, drew inspiration from the late journalist Ed Bradley, a CBS correspondent known for his common touch despite interacting with powerful figures. "He was a friend, a mentor, and a role model for me. The kind of guy who walked with kings, but he had the common touch," Fishburne explained. This casting choice diversified the traditionally white character, aligning with the film's modern sensibilities. Amstra's portrayal of Farrell, Zod's loyal sub-commander, added a fierce female presence to the Kryptonian forces. Trey, a German actress from Pandorum, described Farrah as a bred warrior without the doubts that plague ordinary people. "She's a one-track mind. There's no filter, there's no double meaning," she said. The role was highly physical, involving intense fight scenes in Smallville. Gal Gadot was offered the part but declined due to pregnancy, later taking on Wonder Woman. Other contenders included Alice Eve, Diane Kruger, and Rosamund Pike. Tra's commitment shone in her devotion to Zod, making Farrah a memorable antagonist. Alex played Laura Van, Kal-El's biological mother. Initially, Julia Ormond was announced, but she dropped out, leading to Zwer's casting. Connie Nielsen was in negotiations but later played Queen Helita in Wonder Woman. Zwer, known from Angel's Demons, brought emotional depth to Lara's farewell scenes, emphasizing her loyalty to Jor-El and sacrifice for their son. Christopher Nolan, famous from Law Order, Special Victims Unit, portrayed Colonel Nathan Hardy, a U.S. Air Force officer aiding in the fight against Zod. His call sign Guardian symbolized his protective role. Nolan's military background in acting helped to authenticate the character's resolve during the Metropolis battle. Russell Crowe as Jor-El, Kal-El's father and a Kryptonian scientist, was a high-profile casting. Crowe, an Academy Award winner from Gladiator, incorporated his own experiences as a father into the role. "That's the question that Jor-El faces. That's the situation that he's in," he reflected. Preparation involved extensive physical training, as he wore a spandex suit and spent months on set before filming. Sean Penn and Clive Owen were considered, but Crowe's gravitas fit the holographic guide mentoring Superman. Supporting roles enriched the ensemble. Harry Lennox played Lieutenant General Calvin Swanwick, a stern military leader. Christina Wren portrayed Captain Carrie Ferris, Swanwick's assistant. Richard Schiff was Dr. Emil Hamilton, a DARPA scientist. Carla Gugino voiced Keller, the Kryptonian Eye. Mackenzie Gray played Jack Sir, Zod's scientist. Michael Kelly was Steve Lombard, a Daily Planet employee, and Rebecca Buller played intern Jenny Jurt. Childhood classmates included Jaden Gould as Lana Lang, Rowan Kahn as Kenny Braverman, and Jack Foley as Pete Ross, with Joseph Cranford as adult Ross. Kryptonian soldiers were portrayed by Richard Cetrone, Torrin, Samantha Joe, Carvex, Rivard Defrant, Dev M2, and Apollonia Ivanova, Nadira. The casting process for Man of Steel was meticulous, aiming to blend star power with fresh faces to reboot the franchise. Each actor's background and preparation contributed to a cohesive narrative, emphasizing themes of identity, sacrifice, and heroism. Expanding on Henry Cavill's journey, his casting was announced in January 2011, sending ripples through the fan community. Fans debated whether a British actor could capture the all-American essence of Superman, but Cavill's dedication silenced doubters. He worked with trainer Mark White, famous for 300, to achieve a physique that mirrored comic book illustrations. Cavill's diet included high-protein meals, and he pushed his limits in workouts, often training to exhaustion. This physical transformation was paralleled by emotional preparation. He studied Superman psychology, focusing on the isolation of being the last Kryptonian. In scenes like the oil rig rescue, Cavill's portrayal showed vulnerability beneath the strength, a nuance drawn from Red Son's alternate Superman. For younger Clarks, Timberline and Sprayberry were chosen for their resemblance to Cavill and ability to convey confusion and fear. Sprayberry, in particular, captured teenage Clark's angst in the tornado sequence, highlighting Jonathan's influence. Amy Adams' Lois was a feminist update, actively driving the plot by investigating the Kryptonian ship. Her audition process involved chemistry reads with Cavill, ensuring their banter felt natural. Adams researched journalism, consulting real reporters to portray Lois's determination authentically. In this film, her decision to withhold Clark's secret adds moral complexity. Differing from previous Loises who were often damsels, Michael Shannon's Zod was intimidating, with his military bearing and unyielding gaze. He avoided watching Stamp's version to create an original take, focusing on Zod's tragic motivation as saving his people at any cost. Shannon's improvisations and confrontations with Superman added to raw energy, making the final battle visceral. Kevin Costner's Jonathan provided paternal wisdom, his death scene a turning point for Clark. Costner drew from his rural upbringing, infusing authenticity into farm life depictions. Despite script qualms, his performance resonated, emphasizing self-control. Diane Lane's Martha offered maternal support, her scenes with adult Clark tender. Lane researched adoptive parents, adding layers to Martha's wonder and fear. Lawrence Fishburne's Perry White was authoritative yet compassionate, guiding Lois and Clark. His casting sparked discussions on diversity, which Fishburne embraced, noting it modernized the character. Anjtra trained rigorously for Farah's fights, learning martial arts. Her portrayal emphasized Farah's efficiency, making her a standout in action sequences. Alet Zwer's Lara was poignant, Her goodbye to Kal-El heartbreaking. Zurr focused on Lara's strength, contrasting Krypton's doom. Christopher Meloni's Hardy was heroic, his sacrifice mirroring military valor. Meloni's experience in procedural dramas helped in portraying discipline. Russell Crowe's Jor-El was mentor-like, his hologram guiding Clark. Crowe enjoyed the challenge of playing a ghost-like figure, using voice modulation for ethereal effect. The ensemble's chemistry elevated the film, with each casting choice reflecting Snyder's vision for a realistic superhero tale. To delve deeper into the casting dynamics, the production team conducted extensive screen tests. For Superman, Cavill's test involved donning a replica of Reeves' suit, which he found surreal. This test convinced Snyder of his fit. Similarly, Adams' multiple auditions built her resilience, leading to a nuanced performance. For villains, Shannon's intensity was key. His theater background allowed deep character immersion. Dra's European accent added alien otherness to Farah. Parents' roles were cast for gravitas. Costner and Lane's real-life parenting experiences informed their portrayals. Crowe's Jor-El required star power to match the legacy character. Supporting casts like Lennox and Schiff added credibility to military and scientific elements. Gugino's voice work for Keller was innovative, using I-like intonation. Child actors were selected via nationwide searches, ensuring emotional authenticity in flashbacks. Production development and pre-production. The journey to bring Man of Steel to the screen began in June 2008, when Warner Bros. Actively sought fresh perspectives on how to successfully reboot the Superman film series. The studio took pitches from an impressive array of comic book writers, screenwriters, and directors, each offering their unique vision for the iconic character. Among those who presented their ideas were renowned comic book writers Grant Morrison, Mark Waid, Jeff Johns, and Brad Meltzer, all of whom had significant experience working with the Superman character in various capacities. Morrison's pitch was similar in tone and approach to his acclaimed work on All-Star Superman, while Wade's concept drew inspiration from Superman, Birthright. The studio was essentially looking for a way to distance itself from the previous Superman Returns, which had not performed as well as expected. As Morrison suggested, they should treat Superman Returns like Ang Lee's Hulk, acknowledging it existed but moving forward with a fresh start. Mark Waid echoed the sentiment, noting that The Incredible Hulk had proven audiences would forgive and embrace a franchise reboot. One particularly ambitious pitch came from Mark Millar, who teamed with director Matthew Vaughn to propose an Apatow Superman trilogy. Each installment would be released a year apart, similar to the Lord of the Rings film series. Miller compared his vision to the Godfather trilogy, envisioning a comprehensive chronicle of Superman's entire life from witnessing his father's struggles to save Krypton to a finale where Superman loses his powers as the sun goes supernova. Vaughn suggested Charlie Cox, his Stardust actor, for a Golden Age-inspired Superman when the character was more of a regular person. Vaughn later revealed his pitch would have maintained a tone similar to Richard Donner's 1978 Superman film and would have featured iconic villains including Zod, Brainiac, and Lex Luthor. In August 2008, Warner Bros. Made a significant decision regarding the franchise's future. The studio indicated that the planned sequel to Superman Returns, which Bryan Singer had subtitled Man of Steel, would now become a complete reboot of the film series. Studio executive Jeff Robinov explained the reasoning. Superman Returns hadn't worked as a film in the way they wanted it to, and it didn't position the character properly. He announced plans to have a new film released by either 2010 or 2011, emphasizing that they would reintroduce Superman without any connection to a potential Batman and Superman crossover film. The production timeline faced a critical juncture in August 2009 when a court ruling significantly impacted the project. Jerry Siegel's family successfully recaptured 50% of the rights to Superman's origins and Siegel's share of the copyright in Action Comics #1. While the judge ruled that Warner Bros. Didn't owe the families additional royalties from previous films, there was a crucial stipulation: if the studio didn't begin production on a Superman film by 2011, the Siegel estate would have the legal right to sue for lost revenue on an unproduced film. This legal deadline created urgency for Warner Brothers to move forward with the reboot. The breakthrough came during story discussions for The Dark Knight Rises in 2008. When screenwriter David S. Goyer shared his innovative concept with Christopher Nolan. Goyer presented an idea for how to approach Superman in a modern context that immediately resonated with Nolan. As Nolan later recalled, Goyer told him about a way of approaching the story that he had never seen before, making it incredibly exciting. Impressed with Goyer's vision, Nolan immediately recognized its potential and wanted to get himself and producer Emma Thomas involved in shepherding the project. He worked to get the studio excited about moving forward with this fresh approach. The studio hired Nolan to produce and Goyer to write the screenplay, a decision largely based on the massive financial and critical success of The Dark Knight. Nolan brought his characteristic approach to grounded, realistic storytelling to the project. He admired Bryan Singer's work on Superman Returns for its connection to Richard Donner's version but emphasized that their approach would be different. Nolan explained that many people had approached Superman in various ways, but he only knew the way that had worked for them in the Batman films. He emphasized creating a world where Superman would exist as the only superhero, similar to how Batman operated in the Dark Knight trilogy. However, Nolan clarified that the new film would have no relationship whatsoever with the previous film series, stating that each film serves its own internal logic and they have nothing to do with each other. Studio executive Robinov spoke to Entertainment Weekly about the film's significance in Warner Brothers' larger plans, revealing that Man of Steel was setting the tone for what DC Comics movies would be like going forward. He described it as definitely a first step, indicating the studio's ambitions extended beyond a single film. Plans included incorporating references to the existence of other superheroes within Man of Steel, alluding to the possibility of creating a broader DC universe. The goal was to set the tone for a shared fictional universe of DC Comics characters on film, similar to what Marvel was accomplishing with their cinematic universe. The search for a director involved approaching several prominent filmmakers. Guillermo del Toro, who had worked with Goyer on Blade 2, turned down the director's position because of his commitment to a film adaptation of It the Mountains of Madness. Robert Zemeckis was also approached but ultimately passed on the project. The studio considered several other talented directors including Ben Affleck, Darren Aronofsky, Duncan Jones, Jonathan Liebesman, Matt Reeves, and Tony Scott before making their final decision. In October 2010, Warner Brothers officially hired Zack Snyder as the film's director. Snyder brought his distinctive visual style and experience with action sequences to the project. His hiring marked the turning point for the production, as the film finally had its key creative team in place. Casting began the following November, setting the stage for bringing this new vision of Superman to life. The development of Man of Steel employed a non-linear narrative structure, telling parts of the story through flashbacks rather than a straightforward chronological approach. This decision allowed the filmmakers to explore Clark Kent's journey in a more complex and emotionally resonant way. Snyder confirmed that the film would contain Easter eggs and references to other DC Comics properties, including Booster Gold and Batman, indicating their presence in a shared film universe. When General Zod destroys a satellite in this film, the words Wayne Enterprises are visible, subtly connecting the film to Batman's world. Despite these references, Snyder and Nolan ultimately decided against having Man of Steel share direct continuity with the Dark Knight trilogy. One of the most significant creative decisions involved Superman's treatment of the villain General Zod. In the original script, Zod was going to be sucked into the Phantom Zone at the film's conclusion. However, Snyder and Goyer felt this resolution was unsatisfying, so they asked DC Comics whether Superman would kill someone if he had no other choice. Nolan was initially against this approach, viewing it as contrary to Superman's core values. This led Goyer to develop the climactic scene where Zod uses his heat vision to threaten innocent people in imminent danger, forcing Superman to make an impossible choice. This more morally complex scenario convinced Nolan that the character-defining moment was justified within the story's context. The film's storyboard was created by storyboard artist J.O. Oliva, working on his first live-action feature film project alongside Snyder. Oliva brought unique inspiration to the project, citing Japanese anime shows Dragon Ball Z and Birdie the Mighty as influences for the film's epic battle scenes. During the brainstorming process, Oliva pitched his vision by saying he could come up with action sequences that had never been seen in live-action American cinema and existed only in anime. This approach would ultimately define the film's spectacular and physics-defying action sequences. The casting process for Man of Steel involved extensive searches for the perfect actors to bring these iconic characters to life. Henry Cavill was cast as Kal-El/Clark Kent, becoming the first non-American actor to play Superman in a theatrical film. Cavill had previously been cast in the unproduced Superman, Flyby, and was considered for the role in Superman Returns before losing out to Brandon Routh. For this iteration, Cavill stated there was a very real story behind the Superman character. He explained that exploring the difficulties his character faces as a result of having multiple identities was a central goal, including his birth name Kal-El and his alter ego Clark Kent. Cavill emphasized Superman's isolation, noting that he's alone with no one like him, which must be incredibly scary and lonely, not knowing who or what you are and trying to find what makes sense. To physically transform into Superman, Cavill underwent an intense training regimen. In an interview with Total Film magazine, he revealed he was consuming nearly 5,000 calories daily, training for over 2 hours each day, and consuming massive amounts of protein to pack on the necessary muscle mass. Several other actors were considered for the role, including Tyler Hoechlin, who would later play the character in the Arrowverse and Superman and Lois, Matthew Good, Armie Hammer, Jamie Dornan, Joe Manganiello, and Colin O'Donoghue. Manganiello was Snyder's second choice behind Cavill and was subsequently cast as Deathstroke in Justice League. Cavill cited his inspiration for portraying Superman from 4 specific comics: The Death of Superman, The Return of Superman, Superman, Red Son, and Superman/Batman, The Search for Kryptonite, as he wanted his interpretation to be rooted in source material. Amy Adams was cast as Lois Lane after an extensive search that included actresses Kristen Stewart, Zoe Saldana+A, Olivia Wilde, and Mila Kunis. Snyder explained there was a big, giant search for Lois, as it was an important role. After meeting with Amy Adams, he felt she was perfect for it. Adams had actually auditioned for Superman roles twice before, once for the unproduced Superman, Flyby, and again for Superman Returns before finally landing this role. Snyder praised Adams in a statement, noting she had the talent to capture all the qualities they loved about Lois: smart, tough, funny, warm, ambitious, and beautiful. Adams described her version of Lois as an independent, feisty woman set in a more identifiable world, noting that Lois had become more of a free-ranging journalist who likes to be hands-on, reflecting how the newspaper business had changed with much more pressure. Michael Shannon was cast as General Zod, the Kryptonian military leader who serves as the film's primary antagonist. Viggo Mortensen and Daniel Day-Lewis were also considered for this crucial role. Snyder stated that Zod is not only one of Superman's most formidable enemies but one of the most significant because he has insights into Superman that others don't. He praised Shannon as a powerful actor who could project both the intelligence and malice of the character. When asked why Zod was chosen as a villain, Goyer explained their approach. He and Nolan never start by asking which villain would be cool, but rather what kind of story and theme they want to tell. The villain becomes obvious based on who would be the appropriate antagonist for that story. Goyer stated that when audiences saw the complete movie, they would understand that the only villain they could have used was Zod and the Kryptonians, and nothing else would have made sense. Kevin Costner was cast as Jonathan Kent, Clark's adoptive father, while Diane Lane played Martha Kent, Clark's adoptive mother. Snyder explained his reasoning for casting this particular on-screen couple was purely for realism. He noted that when looking at Diane Law, cinematography with the organic quality of film stock, filming was initially expected to last between 2 and 3 months, though according to Michael Shannon, production would actually continue until February 2012. Production took place in Plano, Illinois, from August 22 to 29, representing the film's Smallville sequences. The production then moved to various locations to capture different aspects of the story. Man of Steel filmed extensively in the Chicago area, throughout California, and at Burnaby's Mammoth Studios in Vancouver. The Vancouver facility was particularly important as it served as the primary set for Krypton and the various extraterrestrial aircraft portrayed in the film. The studio's controlled environment allowed the production team to create the alien world with the necessary detail and consistency. Vancouver's North Shore waterfront area was utilized for the dramatic oil rig rescue scene where Superman is first introduced to audiences, establishing his heroic nature before revealing his true identity. The Canadian locations of Aquabolet and Nanaimo in British Columbia feature prominently in the film's first hour, with their trademark winter mist and rough seas standing in for Alaska. These locations provided the cold, isolated atmosphere necessary for Clark Kent's early wandering years. Filming took place in the Chicago Loop from September 7 to 17, representing a significant unit project. This meant the Chicago shoot would capture numerous establishing shots and cutaways that might not necessarily include principal cast members but would provide essential visual elements for the film's climactic metropolis battle sequences. The choice to film in Chicago gave the production access to a major American city's impressive architecture and urban landscape, crucial for depicting the scale of destruction during Superman and Zod's final confrontation. The production design extended to the costumes, which represented a significant departure from traditional Superman imagery. Man of Steel features a redesigned Superman costume created by James Acheson and Michael Wilkinson. While the costume preserves the iconic color scheme and S logo, it adopts notably darker tones and eliminates the red trunks that Superman had traditionally worn. Snyder described the costume as having a modern aesthetic. He and the producers attempted to devise a suit featuring the red trunks but couldn't design one that fit the tone of the film, leading to their removal. The costume development process involved both designers due to scheduling. Wilkinson's initial unavailability meant Acheson began developing the suit, but when Wilkinson returned, he finished the development and designed the other characters' costumes as well. In a March 2014 interview with Esquire, Wilkinson explained the reasoning behind Superman's redesigned suit. He emphasized that significant effort went into explaining why the suit looks the way it does, so they didn't want it to be a random, ornamental decision. The film starts on planet Krypton where the suit originates, taking great pains to show the suit fitting into that culture. All Kryptonians wear a similar chainmail-like suit with the same detailing. Everyone has their family crests on their chests, and the cuff and boot details are shared across all different characters on Krypton. By the time audiences see Superman in his suit, they understand its cultural and historical significance. Due to the substantial weight a practical suit would create, General Zod's Kryptonian armor was constructed through CGI rather than physical costume pieces. This allowed Michael Shannon complete freedom of movement during his performance, enabling him to execute the complex fight choreography without the limitations a heavy practical costume would impose. Post-production. The post-production phase of Man of Steel involved extensive and groundbreaking visual effects work. John D.J. Desjardins served as the visual effects supervisor, coordinating the work of multiple major visual effects houses. Weta Digital, Moving Picture Company, MPC, and Double Negative all contributed significant visual effects work to create the film's spectacular imagery. Zack Snyder's vision was for the film to appear very natural despite containing fantastical elements, making it easier for audiences to suspend their disbelief. Desjardins noted that Snyder's intent in shooting the film was to use handheld camera techniques to make it feel like a documentary-style film, which presented unique challenges when photographing crazy action sequences. The visual effects team had to think carefully about camera placement and positioning, considering where cameramen would realistically be during these extraordinary events. Many of the rules followed were inspired by the space camera work Gary Hutzel developed for the Battlestar Galactica miniseries, ensuring that camera movements made logical sense. When translating the camera through space, the movements needed to feel motivated unless the action was so over the top that they had to break the rules slightly, particularly in the climactic battle between Superman and Zod. For the first act taking place on planet Krypton, Weta Digital created alien planet environments, creatures, and a unique technology the filmmakers called liquid geometry. This innovative display technology became the principal means of visual information on Krypton. Weta Digital Visual Effects supervisor Dan Lemon explained that liquid geometry consists of silver beads suspended through a magnetic field. The machine controls this magnetic field so that the collection of beads behaves almost like three-dimensional pixels, creating a surface that floats in the air and describes whatever object needs to be displayed. Up close, these beads appear as pyramids with a slight bevel, designed to create the surface of objects within a console-like figure. The technical process for creating liquid geometry was extremely complex. Brian Goodwin, Weta Digital's lead effects technical director, explained they had to develop a completely new pipeline to bring in assets. Rather than reducing polygon counts to something usable through traditional methods, they would take the model however it was made and scatter discrete points onto it. They would extract the matrix onto the animation and copy these points onto the matrix, creating sparse points that behave the way the model would. After animation, artists duplicated the beads onto the animated geometry for a pre-simulated lighting version to get approval on how the object would read. Simulations were then run on all the targets, with discrete beads floating around on top of surfaces. Each had its own set of parameters, including bead size and turbulence that would constantly crawl along the surface, updating orientation based on the normal provided by the surface. This simulation was saved to disk and used as the final target. After the simulation process, Weta Digital ran every bead through a temporal filter to remove jitter and control noise. Lighting solutions worked directly with the set. Weta used RenderMan to take advantage of improved ray tracing and instancing objects, pushing the boundaries of what was technically possible at the time. The sequences featuring Superman's close combat fight scenes with other Kryptonians proved to be a major challenge for both filmmakers and the visual effects crew. Desjardins explained their approach. They wanted to avoid the traditional method where a cameraman shoots a clean plate and pans to follow action that isn't there yet, with action added later. That approach meant animating characters to the camera. Instead, they would animate the characters grappling, punching, or flying away and capture the real actors up until the point they were supposed to perform superhuman actions, then cut. They would place an environment camera there to capture the environment, and another camera for reference of the actors at each moment. This provided a set of higher-resolution stills for both the environment and the characters. In post-production, they would take digital doubles and animate them according to the desired speeds within the digital environment. MPC handled the visual effects for the Smallville encounter sequence, one of the film's most memorable action set pieces. Before providing visual effects, the shots were extensively pre-visualized to plan the fight choreography. After pre-visualization, live-action portions were filmed in small pieces. If Superman was being punched and would land 50 meters away, they would shoot the start position and end position, then bridge that gap with CGI takeovers. A camera rig would obtain keyframes of the choreographed actors. This 6-still camera rig was built on a pipe rig that could be run in at the end of a setup to capture stills of keyframes of a performance or expression. These higher-resolution stills could be projected onto the CGI double to get accurate transition lighting and colored directly from the set. On set, a camera rig dubbed EnviroCam was used to capture the environment of each sequence. The visual effects crew would mount a Canon EOS 5D camera with a motorized nodal head, allowing them to capture the environment at a 360-degree angle with 55K resolution for every shot. This process took approximately 2 to 4 minutes per shot. The set capture resulted in lighting and textures that could be reprojected onto geometry, ensuring seamless integration between practical and digital elements. Full-screen digital doubles were a major component for the fighting sequences. Digital armor was added, along with the energy-based Kryptonian helmets. Cyberscan and facial action coding system, FACS, were conducted with the actors, and polarized and non-polarized reference photos were taken to capture every detail. Superman's cape and costume were scanned in extremely high detail. The cape in particular became a direct extension of Superman's actions, flowing and responding to his movements in ways that would be impossible to achieve practically. For sequences involving the terraforming of Metropolis, Double Negative handled the visual effects. To construct a metropolis that seemed convincing and realistic, Double Negative used Esri's city engine to help procedurally deliver the city. According to visual effects supervisor Ged Wright, it was a much more science fiction-based role, so they took what had been done and extended it greatly. The work was based around the downtowns of New York City, Los Angeles, and Chicago, providing building volumes for Heights. They would scan those volumes with kit parts, but most of it then had to be destroyed. Everything had to be rigged for destruction and used for other aspects of the work as well. For the destruction of buildings, the studio rewrote its own asset system to focus on dynamic events. The bullet physics software was a heavily impacted component for the destruction simulations. Wright explained they wanted to be able to run a rigid body dynamics event and trigger all secondary events. Whether glass or dust simulations saw all of those things needed to be chained up and handled procedurally. One advantage was that because everything was based around a limited number of input components, they could ensure components were modeled in a way that made them usable in effects. Models could be created knowing there would be another stage to rig them for destruction. Fire, smoke, and water simulation tools were developed specifically at the Double Negative studio for Man of Steel. The studio transitioned between existing proprietary volume rendering software to rendering in Montreux for elements such as fireball simulations. Double Negative also used the in-house Fluids tool Squirt to handle larger-scale simulations and interaction for more tightly coupled volumes and particles. Regarding the climactic battle between Superman and Zod, Double Negative implemented real photography onto its digital doubles, ensuring the characters maintained photorealistic quality even during the most fantastic action sequences. Music Hans Zimmer initially denied popular rumors that he would be composing the film's score, creating uncertainty about who would provide the musical foundation for this new Superman. However, in June 2012, it was confirmed that Zimmer would indeed be scoring Man of Steel after all. This represented a significant creative decision, as Zimmer's approach to the Superman theme would differ dramatically from what had come before. To completely distinguish Man of Steel from previous films, the filmmakers made the bold choice not to use the iconic Superman March by John Williams. This beloved theme had been synonymous with Superman since 1978, but the creative team felt that to truly establish this as a fresh start, they needed an entirely new musical identity for the character. Hans Zimmer's soundtrack for Man of Steel was released publicly on June 11, 2013, just days before the film's theatrical release. An unofficial rip of the musical score from the third trailer, entitled An Ideal of Hope, was released on April 19. This track, which proved to be a cut-down version of the full piece What Are You Going to Do When You Are Not Saving the World, from the complete soundtrack, generated significant excitement among fans. In late April, the official track listing of the 2-CD deluxe edition was revealed, showing the full scope of Zimmer's work on the film. The score featured Zimmer's characteristic blend of orchestral and electronic elements, creating a sound that felt both epic and intimate, modern yet timeless. Zimmer's approach emphasized the emotional journey of the character rather than creating a traditional superhero fanfare. The main theme builds gradually throughout the film, reflecting Clark Kent's journey to becoming Superman. The score incorporates percussion and electronic elements alongside traditional orchestral instruments, creating a sound that feels grounded yet mythic, perfectly complementing the film's visual style and thematic concerns. Released theatrical Man of Steel's theatrical release was carefully orchestrated to maximize impact and audience reach. The film held its world premiere with the red carpet event at Lincoln Center's Alice Tully Hall in New York City on June 10, 2013. This prestigious venue provided an appropriately grand setting for introducing this new vision of Superman to the world. The premiere featured attendance from the principal cast members, creating significant media coverage and building anticipation for the film's wider release. The film received a wide release on June 14, 2013, opening in theaters across the United States and internationally. The release strategy included multiple formats to appeal to different audience preferences and maximize box office potential. Man of Steel was available in standard 2D, 3D, RED 3D, IMAX 3D, and the immersive 4DX format that added physical effects to the viewing experience. This multi-format approach reflected the modern theatrical landscape and Warner Bros.' commitment to making the film a major event. The June 14 release date itself represented a strategic decision. The film was originally slated for release in December 2012. But Warner Bros. Pushed it to June 2013 to avoid competition with the studio's other major release, The Hobbit: An Unexpected Journey, which opened on December 14, 2012. This move demonstrated the studio's confidence in Man of Steel's summer blockbuster potential while also protecting both films from having to compete against each other. The marketing campaign for Man of Steel was extensive and innovative, utilizing both traditional and viral marketing techniques. Warner Bros. And DC Comics won the rights to the domain name manofsteel.com, which had been in use by a member of the public, for use as the film's official website. This legal victory ensured the studio had complete control over the film's primary web presence. On November 20, 2012, coinciding with the release of The Dark Knight Rises on DVD and Blu-ray, Warner Bros. Launched a countdown on the film's website. Fans could share the countdown on social media platforms like Facebook and Twitter to unlock an exclusive reward. On December 3, 2012, this reward was revealed to be an official Man of Steel teaser poster depicting Superman being arrested. The poster generated extremely positive response and intense speculation about the film's story, with fans debating what circumstances would lead to Superman's arrest. On December 10, 2012, a mysterious website appeared at TrueProject.com providing audio signals to be decoded by viewers. It was discovered to be related to Man of Steel due to the copyright information on the website. By December 11, 2012, the decoded message led viewers to another website featuring a countdown that led to the public release of the trailer. This viral marketing campaign successfully engaged fans and created organic buzz through interactive participation. The viral marketing campaigns became increasingly elaborate. The official website was replaced with mysterious deep space radio waves. When decoded, the message revealed a voice saying "You are not alone." The official site continued updating with new static files that slowly revealed the symbol for General Zod. Shortly after, the website was replaced with a message from Zod requesting that Earth return Kal-El to his custody. Zod gave Kal-El 24 hours to surrender or the world would suffer the consequences. A viral site called IWillFindHim.com was released showing a countdown to the third trailer for the film. Warner Bros. Enlisted Grace Hill Media, a Christian-based marketing firm, to help spread the religious themes of the film to religious demographics. Hollywood studios frequently market movies to specific religious and cultural groups, and Warner Bros. Had previously marketed films like The Blind Side, The Notebook, The Book of Eli, and the Harry Potter series to faith-based groups. Special trailers were created outlining religious tones present in Man of Steel. Warner Bros. Asked Professor Craig Detweiler of Pepperdine University to create a Superman-centric sermon outline for pastors titled Jesus, the Original Superhero. This approach generated both support and controversy, with some praising the acknowledgement of Superman's mythological aspects while others questioned the appropriateness of such direct religious marketing. Paul Asay of The Washington Post wrote that the religious themes were pervasive, describing Man of Steel as not just a movie but a Bible study in a cape, noting that messages of free will, sacrifice, and God-given purpose were strongly emphasized. Marketers had been explicitly pushing the film to Christian audiences, creating materials designed to facilitate religious discussion groups centered around the film. In anticipation of the film's release, major toy manufacturers unveiled extensive product lines. Mattel released the toy line including Movie Masters action figures, allowing fans to collect screen-accurate representations of the characters. LEGO released 3 Man of Steel sets inspired by specific scenes from the film, giving fans the opportunity to recreate key moments. Ruby's Costume Company released a new line of Man of Steel-inspired costumes and accessories for both children and adults, enabling fans to embody their favorite characters. The film reportedly earned over $160 million from promotional tie-ins, demonstrating the significant commercial potential beyond box office receipts. Home media. Man of Steel's home media release was comprehensive, offering multiple formats to appeal to different consumers. The film was released on November 12, 2013, in several configurations. A single-disc DVD containing only the feature film was available for budget-conscious consumers. A 2-disc DVD with extensive bonus features provided behind-the-scenes content and additional material for fans wanting deeper engagement with the filmmaking process. Respective Blu-ray and Blu-ray 3D combo packs offered the highest quality home viewing experience available at the time. In the United Kingdom, the home media release followed on December 2, 2013, giving international audiences access to the film for repeated viewing and deeper analysis. The staggered international release dates were typical for major Hollywood productions, reflecting different market strategies and retail considerations in various regions. The home media release proved commercially successful, demonstrating the film's lasting appeal beyond its theatrical run. As of January 2019, Man of Steel had sold more than 2.3 million DVDs along with an estimated 3.3 million Blu-ray discs. These sales generated approximately $44.4 million in DVD revenue and $76.2 million in Blu-ray revenue, totaling $120.7 million in combined physical media sales. These impressive figures demonstrated that despite the growth of digital streaming and rental services, physical media remained an important revenue stream for major studio releases. The film was later released in 4K Ultra HD Blu-ray format on July 19, 2016. This release provided viewers with the absolute highest quality home viewing experience, taking advantage of improvements in display technology that had occurred since the film's original release. The 4K format offered significantly enhanced picture quality with greater detail, expanded color gamut, and high dynamic range, allowing viewers to see the film closer to how it appeared in theaters. The bonus features included on the expanded home media editions provided extensive insight into the filmmaking process. Behind-the-scenes documentaries explored the production design, visual effects work, costume design, and the philosophical approach to reimagining. Reviews and facts. Number 1. I love 1978 Superman, the movie. I figured I'd get that out of the way off the bat so you know where I'm coming from. Richard Donner's big-budget epic was bolstered by the tagline, "You'll believe a man can fly a broken bar," and audiences did a broken bar in droves. Capturing the all-American charm of one Clark Kent aka Superman, Donner's film successfully moved characters that had long lived on the pages of comic books and a television show to the silver screen with impressive results. So perhaps it was a bit too much to hope that 2013's Man of Steel could provide some of that same magic in kicking off yet another reboot of the superhero with the giantess on his chest. The trouble is that this updated hero is too aloof, too troubled a searching soul to mine any joy out of the proceedings. It's a chilly film with precious little in the way of true blue charm and moxie. Instead, it's largely a showcase for director Zack Snyder, Sucker Punch, Watchmen, to puff his special effects chest out, and screenwriter David S. Goyer, Batman Begins, The Dark Knight Rises, to put a Bruce Wayne-style glumness on the picture. Perhaps that solemnity also comes courtesy of producer Christopher Nolan, who successfully reshaped the Batman franchise into a lean and mean money-making machine. What worked for Nolan and Goyer on the Batman films unfortunately doesn't work here, and more is the pity because several other key elements of the film are strikingly on point. Take Henry Cavill for instance. The Brit is possessing of a well-toned 8-pack to go along with his all-American features and cheekbones that could cut kryptonite. The script never allows him to emerge too far from his gloomy gus-hole, but there are moments especially near the end where we can see a glint in Cavill's eye that brings a little Christopher Reeve to mind, in his newly redesigned suit, which does look better than the near-neon colors in previous Superman films. Cavill is a convincing hero that has real potential. I also found a lot to like about Kevin Costner and Diane Lane as refreshingly earthy incarnations of Jonathan and Martha Kent, Superman's earth-bound adoptive parents that provide stability even when his powers threaten to overwhelm their found child. Most of their performances are relegated to flashbacks, and much of the film is presented in a non-linear fashion as Clark wanders from job to job, only moving on when his powers put him in danger of being discovered. Costner has some of the best scenes in the film as he alternatively counsels his son and quietly fears for him if the outside world knew what he can do. I've often found Costner to be too mannered of an actor, always holding back what he's really feeling, but here he's given nice material that helps him shine. The same can't be said for poor Amy Adams, the master, who was terribly miscast as ace reporter Lois Lane. Though it's well documented she has auditioned, lobbied for this role on 3 occasions, it's a shame she didn't do more with the role when she finally got a crack at it. I miss the plucky verve that Margot Kidder to the role, and it's something I'm disappointed Adams didn't tape into more. That being said, she's light years more interesting than Kate Bosworth was in 2006's Superman Returns. I'm still not totally sure how I feel about Michael Shannon, the Iceman, as Superman's main nemesis. Captain Zod, talking out of the side of his mouth and sounding like he has a lifesaver he wants to keep under his tongue. Shannon is an unlikely choice for the role, and even wearing a costume that looks like a hand-me-down from Kiss, he manages to give the character more depth than was probably necessary. Russell Crowe's Les Miserables, Jor-El can't hold a candle to the I can't believe this works as well as it is casting of Marlon Brando in Donner's film, but there's a solid whiff of nobility given off by Crowe, a broken bar, and thank the Lord he doesn't sing in this one. Snyder is known for putting a rich visual spin on his films, and that's what almost saved his disastrous Sucker Punch from being totally relegated to the waste bin. In Man of Steel the special effects gets the better of him, though with too much of the film looking more cartoony than visually impressive. Sure, the flying sequences are solidly entertaining, and some of the larger action sequences, including a much too long go-for-broke finale, look mighty fun, but it only adds to a strange hollowness to the entire film. I may be a bigger fan of Superman than any other comic book character, so I was very much looking forward to seeing where the next generation of Superman movies will take us. This wasn't the movie I really wanted to see, and that's a bummer, a broken bar, but then I remember that I wasn't totally taken with Batman Begins either when I first saw it. Time will tell if Cavill and company will find a way to truly take flight in their next outing, but it's possible that with more focus on the good and less on the glum, a better franchise starter will emerge. Number 2 Superman has flown back into theaters for the first time since 2006's poorly received Superman Returns. The Zack Snyder directed, Christopher Nolan produced reboot focuses on Kal-El/Clark Kent's origins, including the discovery of his superpowers. Henry Cavill dons the iconic suit this time around, while Amy Adams steps into the role of Daily Planet reporter Lois Lane. Meanwhile, Russell Crowe plays Kal-El's birth father, Jor-El, and Michael Shannon is out to wreak havoc as the menacing General Zod. Kevin Costner and Diane Lane play Clark Kent's adoptive parents. Man of Steel has already taken in $21 million in the U.S. from Thursday night and midnight screenings. The film also broke box office records in Asia. The big-budget tentpole combines a philosophical backstory with lots of action sequences. But will this combination convince people to see the movie? Read what some of the critics had to say below. The Hollywood Reporter, as Todd McCarthy writes, that the film is a big, brash spectacle that should have staying power at the box office. Zack Snyder's huge, backstory-heavy extravaganza is a rehab job that perhaps didn't cry out to be done, but proves so overwhelmingly insistent in its size and strength that it's hard not to give in. Warner Brothers' new tentpole should remain firmly planted around the world for much of the summer, he says. Story: Warner Brothers, A Man of Steel nabs $170 million in promotional dollars. The New York Times' Manohla Dargis praises the movie's appearance but argues that the action-packed special effects sequences sometimes overpower the deeper issues, particularly towards the end of the film. Everything is almost lost in the last 45 minutes, when Mr. Snyder piles on the hammering special effects, becoming yet one more director gone disappointingly amok. Dargis writes, "That's too bad, because if you wave away all the computer-generated smoke and see past the pulverized buildings, it's possible to remain hooked on the resonant origin story that went through Man of Steel, that of the immigrant." The Los Angeles Times' Kenneth Turan goes further, saying that, much like Superman's struggle with his identity, the movie is similarly torn. This film is pulled in different directions, delivering satisfactions without managing to be completely satisfying, Turan writes. Times Richard Corliss agrees that the movie is divided, but is a fan of both components. The action is plentiful and thumping Marvel-sized thrills await you and the generations of kids who still believe in Superman. I just mean that the movie finds its true, lofty footing not when it displays Kal-El's extraordinary powers but when it dramatizes Clark Kent's roiling humanity. The super part of Man of Steel is just okay but the man part is super. As for Cavill, most critics say the British actor looks the part. Corliss elaborates, conforming to the superhero template of the preposterously muscled hunk, the Englishman also brings to the role exactly the right haunted, stricken but resolute, synthetic chainmail that's described as battle armor rather than as a uniform or costume, and Supes wears his underwear on the inside. Thank you very much. Scene for scene, this is a first-rate example of a Hollywood fantasy released in the early 21st century. A new car smell summer blockbuster. It has wobbly handheld camera work signifying authenticity, a glum color palette, skyline-shattering super fights, hardware whose designs crib from Alien, Dune, Independence Day and Spielberg's War of the Worlds, and a detailed mythology that can plug into an expansive, Marvel-style universe. When humor bubbles up, welcome though it is, it feels like a tonal lapse. Man of Steel also breaks with past Superman films in how it tells its story. The script, which is credited to David S. Goyer of the Blade films, starts with the prologue on Krypton, envisioned here as a John Carter-style land of towering hyperstructures, Matrix-looking hovercraft, and winged beasts. Superman's dad Jor-El, Russell Crowe, and mother Lara Al-Ghul are fighting two battles at once, to convince the planet's government that its environmental recklessness is causing the planet's core to melt, and to contain a rebellion led by General Zod, Michael Shannon, who's outraged that Jor-El dared to violate Krypton's biological breeding protocol and conceive a son the old-fashioned way. Zod and his followers are exiled to the Phantom Zone in ships that look mortifyingly like the hero's spacecraft in the 1970s porn spoof Flash Gordon. The film's design is a riot of phallic and vaginal imagery, as most post-alien sci-fi films are. Krypton explodes. Kal-El zips off to Earth and is raised by Ma and Pa Kent, Diane Lane and Kevin Costner, in idyllic prairie surroundings that call for an Aaron Copland score, though Hans Zimmer does just fine. After the New Testament time span of 33 years, we pick up Kal-El/Clark's story in time for him to unlock the destiny that his adoptive parents kept secret. Their motives were good. They predicted the hostility he would encounter once he put on his tight say-sorry armor. To fight Zod and prevent Earth from being flattened to make a new Krypton. Zod's plot to create a resurrected Krypton echoes Superman Returns, though given that film's poor reception, I'm sure the filmmakers would rather nobody pointed them out. As the adult Clark, Superman, Henry Cavill's not bad. In fact, he's quite likable, and spectacularly handsome, but there's no Reeve-like radiant comfort in his acting, because the character as imagined here is even more of a blank screen for our projections than most movie superheroes. Like Christopher Nolan's Batman pictures, the Goyer-scripted Man of Steel reveals key moments in the hero's development through flashbacks triggered by present-day dramas. A few parts almost seem to be unfolding along simultaneous timelines, the past and the present. This is not just defensible but appropriate, considering that so much of the story is about having to function today while carrying around the crushing weight of your own past, as well that of an extinct mother world you never got to know. The most striking scenes show young Superman struggling to make sense of powers he can't display, for fear of being labeled a freak or a monster. One early sequence shows young Clark zoning out during a school lesson because he's overwhelmed by the data hoovered into his brain by his super senses. When he looks at his classmates and teachers, he sees their bones and veins and organs through their skin, and because he hasn't mastered the art of filtering sound, he hears a cacophony of voices in his ears, like the burbling of a crowd at a ball game. There's a touch of The Incredibles in the scenes of Jonathan Kent explaining why Clark can't reveal the full extent of his specialness. Costner is superb in these moments, projecting an unforced, old movie-style decency that may remind fans of his performance in Field of Dreams. It's as if Ray Kinsella, the adult son in Dreams, has become the father in this one, an icon of kindness, yet sad, died and mysterious, worn down by life, as Ray described his own pop, when Clark, who's passed the years on a fishing boat while rocking a perfect storm beard, heads north and gets his own pad, the Fortress of Solitude, he acquires a second father, his biological daddy Jor-El. Supes the elder becomes a present-tense Obi-Wan, advising and arguing with Clark, and later, Zod. This is all good stuff, though it was done less ostentatiously in the TV series Smallville, but it's all a setup for the film's second half, which juxtaposes Clark's transformation into Superman with Zod's return to Earth on a mission of vengeance and world-building. It's here that the film loses something. It's not that what's on screen isn't involving. For the most part it's splendidly realized, even though the muted color palette, shaky camera work and second-hand design concepts won't win prizes for originality. I like how the filmmakers link Superman's embrace of the destiny his adoptive father hoped he'd resist, and Zod assuming the mantle of visionary warrior leader that Jor-El denied him on Krypton. The notion that politics is personal gets a workout. Zod isn't as amusingly effete in Man of Steel as he was in Superman 2, but he's not without humor, some of it inadvertent. Shannon, an expert in projecting self-defeating macho rage, makes Zod less of a straightforward evildoer than a tragically misguided anti-hero. There are times when his rivalry with Clark, Superman, recalls the tension between Hawkeye and Miguel and Michael Mann's The Last of the Mohicans, and that the villain is only a villain if you're looking at him through the eyes of the people he's steamrolling. You don't condone Zod's actions, but you understand his motivations. In his twisted way, he's trying to preserve and continue the legacy of a vanished world. Something in Cavill's beefy Boy Scout performance suggests that Superman gets to say that he understands Zod even though he knows he has to destroy him. The hero's struggle not to give in to rage and pettiness when facing bullies like Zod, to use his power to heal and save rather than destroy, is explored with more finesse than you might expect. No, the film's most curious and unfortunate aspect, its Achilles heel, really is the way it minimizes or shuts out women. You can see this tendency in the way Man of Steel handles Lois Lane, Amy Adams. She's portrayed as a capable reporter, more so than in previous films, but I didn't detect much chemistry between her and Clark, even when you factor in the ungodly pressure they're both under. While Clark is dealing with his demons in the worlds, she's uncovering a government conspiracy to hide evidence of a buried Kryptonian spacecraft, then struggling against her Daily Planet editor Perry White, Lawrence Fishburne, for the right to publish a story she feels is true but can't prove. There are flirtatious moments between Lois and Clark, but they're few and far between, and I'm not convinced that the apocalyptic events surrounding the couple are the only reason. This is a butch Superman film, driven by machismo. Lois is an important character, but only for how she furthers Clark/Superman's attempts to understand himself and claim his destiny. She's less of a fully realized human being than the kooky narcissist played by Margot Kidder in the re-films, or Kate Bosworth's Lois in Superman Returns, a melancholy figure defined by her ability to move on after the hero's sudden departure from Earth. Adams' Lois is tough and smart, but she has no personality, only drive, and she's not as integral to the action as she seems to be on first glance. It's telling that this movie gives equal weight to the story of a distrustful general, Chris Meloni, whose relationship with Superman lets him become the stand-in for a doubting Earth, a role filled by Lois in the 1978 film. Ma Kent isn't daring, but she's not as powerful a presence as the doomed Jonathan. The hero's Bertha mother vanishes after the prologue, her absence explained in a throwaway line that Gross seems embarrassed to have to deliver. The uncharitable might notice that when a stupid question has to be asked, or a trivial remark made, it's often delivered by one of a handful of women in a room full of burly guys. They may also note that while every significant male figure in Man of Steel is given an option to be physically brave under horrible circumstances, even gray-haired Pa Kent and Perry White have their moments. Females exist, for the most part, to be saved, or to have things explained to them. Considering that every previous Superman movie put the courtship dance between men and women at the heart of its action, particularly Superman, the movie, Superman 2 and Superman Returns. The fact that Man of Steel has a no girls allowed sensibility seems like a deliberate creative choice. It's as if the filmmakers want to reassure young male viewers accustomed to the glib swagger of Iron Man and the dire self-pity of Nolan's Batman trilogy that Superman is in the same wheelhouse. Zod's right-hand woman Phaedra Trey is a powerful presence, but she's even more desexualized than Lois. Her character's main trait is a pathological hatred of men. Again, this is all state-of-the-art, very much in line with the way superhero movies are done now, and yet this aspect of the modernization feels retro, because it comes at the expense of an under-acknowledged part of Superman's appeal. Virtually alone among big-name superheroes, he's a romantically and sexually mature man who seems to like and be comfortable around women. If you're wondering why I could say so many positive things and only give the movie 3 stars, the preceding 2 paragraphs are your answer. Viewers who predicted that Warner Brothers and DC Comics were trying to turn Superman into the Dark Knight were right. Sort of. Man of Steel is in many ways an astonishing movie, but it won't do anything to quell complaints that the big-budget superhero genre is basically adolescent, that its creative development has been arrested for decades and might not budge anytime soon. Number 4. There's nary a mention of Kryptonite. The Fortress of Solitude is only an existential locale, and Clark Kent never earned so much as a single Daily Planet byline in Man of Steel. Director Zack Snyder, writer David S. Goyer and producer Christopher Nolan's strenuously revisionist Superman origin story, which might more accurately have been titled Rock'em Sock'em Spaceman, given the amount of screen time devoted to exiled Kryptonians body-slamming each other into all manner of natural and man-made structures, clearly designed to do for DC Comics' other most venerable property what Nolan and Goyer's Batman Begins did for the Caped Crusader. This heavily hyped, brilliantly marketed tentpole attraction seems destined to soar with worldwide audiences this summer, even if the humorless tone and relentlessly noisy, visually and sonically, aesthetics leave much to be desired. Chiefly, a Steel sequel directed with less of an iron fist, where the red-booted one's last big-screen appearance, Bryan Singer's 2006 Superman Returns, was conceived as a mash nod to Richard Donner's iconic 1978 Superman. Snyder, Goyer and Nolan, who also shares a story credit, labor to distance Man of Steel from those precursors, starting with a Krypton that looks less like an ice castle in the sky than a grayer, grimier version of Avatar's Pandora, by way of Alien. There, the noble scientist Jor-El, Russell Crowe, plots to spirit his newborn son, Kal-El, away from the dying planet, a plan that coincides with a military coup staged by the rogue Gen Zod, Michael Shannon, sporting a most unflattering bowl cut. That sequence sets the tone for much of what follows in Man of Steel, with Hans Zimmer's thunderous score rattling both speakers and eardrums, the actors dwarfed by layer upon layer of crumbling buildings and warring spacecraft. After Zod and his accomplices are caught, they're frozen solid and banished to a black hole Siberia. Just before Krypton itself goes kaboom. Man of Steel then breaks from a linear timeline to jump ahead some 33 years, where we find the adult Clark, Henry Cavill, working as a grunt on a commercial fishing trawler, not yet having revealed his superego to the world, but occasionally dabbling in large-scale heroics nonetheless. When a nearby oil rig is engulfed in a fiery blaze, he barges in to rescue the crew, then just as quickly disappears before anyone can ask too many questions. As in Batman Begins, which opened with a wayward Bruce Wayne wandering the earth like Kung Fu's cane, these are supposed to be Clark/Kel's years in the wilderness, grappling with daddy issues and an amorphous sense of self as he bounces from place to place and one odd job to the next. Pick also adopts a similar flashback structure in which present events trigger memories of Clark's past, as the adopted son of Illinois farm folk Jonathan, a touching Kevin Costner, and Martha, Diane Lane, Kent, as a loner, outcast bullied by schoolmates, and as a superhero to be coming to terms with his alien heritage and powerful gifts. But even here, Snyder seems averse to staging a single scene in which there isn't something catastrophic happening, whether it's a school bus accident that plunges Clark and his classmates into a raging ravine, or the entire Kent family finding itself stranded on a highway in the path of an oncoming twister. Things finally snap into sharper focus for Clark when he follows news reports of a strange anomalous object to a NORAD outpost somewhere in the Arctic and, via a little Kryptonian hocus-pocus, communes with the holographic consciousness of his birth father, who narrates a brief animated history of the rise and fall of Krypton, drawn in striking Soviet propaganda art style. It's there, at just around the 50-minute mark, that Clark first dons the trademark S-suit, and also where he first encounters Lois Lane, Amy Adams, this time a Pulitzer Prize-winning hard news reporter who uses her journalistic acumen to quickly deduce Soup's secret identity. But rather than moving logically onto Metropolis, Man of Steel somewhat curiously dovetails back to Smallville, where Clark's reunion with dear old Mom is interrupted by the arrival of Zod. Newly freed from his interstellar limbo, he threatens to make haste with all of humanity unless Cal surrenders both himself and a coveted codex that can be used to rebuild Krypton, a broken bar on Earth. So far, so gloomy, with little of the genuine wonderment the very name Superman calls to mind. Blessed with the most classically chiseled jawline of any actor who's yet donned the red cape, Cavill is also the most stern brooding, lacking even the sardonic self-amusement of Christian Bale and Bruce Wayne mode, and he appears to have been directed to be exactly this way. Like its lead, Snyder's entire movie seems afraid to crack a smile. The ambition to make a grittier kind of Superman pick is certainly admirable, but much of what Snyder and Goyer set out to fix wasn't really broken in the first place. By having Lois discover Clark's true identity so early on, Man of Steel relinquishes the halting romantic chemistry between the two characters that brightened previous versions of the tale. And a narrow focus on Clark, Lois and Zod gives the movie an oddly circumscribed feel. Nowhere to be found is the rich gallery of colorful supporting players that populated the Donner film, Nolan's Batman picks and Snyder's own Watchmen, one of the richest and most satisfying of all comic book adaptations. Gone, too, are any of those lighter moments, fondly remembered from Superman Past, in which our hero in or out of disguise used his powers for decidedly non-super feats and, by doing so, grew closer to his fellow man. One longs to see the Superman change a flat or rescue a kitten from a tree or take Lois for a flight around the block. Instead, we get two climactic rumbles, one on the streets of Smallville, one, finally, in downtown Metropolis, that test one's patience for blurs of movement smashing through buildings with little if any respect for the laws of physics. Indeed, if Man of Steel doesn't much look like previous Superman movies, it does closely resemble such other recent sci-fi/fantasy picks like Thor, The Avengers and Transformers and their symphonies of disorienting CGI destruction. At points, the action scenes even recall the hallucinogenic dream sequences from Snyder's own crazily ambitious mental hospital musical, Sucker Punch, except everyone here is supposed to be wide awake. Pick is undeniably impressive, in the sense that little if any expense has been spared in bringing Snyder's vision to the screen, though this is a case where less would almost surely have been more. Much of the craft work exudes the same general feeling of overkill, from the frantic handheld shooting and desaturated colors of Leden's mere mockery to the unceasing Wagnerian bombast of Zimmer's score. Number 5. Star Cast: Amy Adams, Christopher Nolan, Diane Lane, Henry Cavill, Kevin Costner, Lawrence Fishburne, Michael Shannon, Russell Crowe, and Trey Alexander. Director, Zack Snyder. What's good? There's some luscious innovation and tempting action lucidly punched in. What's bad? The film is packed with visible star clothes that are hard to miss. With a few sections dragging on at times, there is overdue of emotional quotient. Lou break, non-watch or not? Man of Steel will give you an intoxicating Superman high. There is a flavor and grandiose in its ambience, and the climax is well stacked with breathtaking action sequences. Though the screenplay has its share of glitches and is often knotted up, this Superman edition definitely doesn't disappoint. User rating: talking of Clark's past and his history, it will be unfair to delve out any bit of the story. However, for your satisfaction, Clark is the sole survivor of the wiped-out planet Krypton. An old rival of his birth father comes alive from the dead, refurbishing his old plan to eradicating Earth and accommodating the folks of Krypton on Earth. Clark, who has taken on the best of both planets, has a tough choice to make. Man of Steel review. Script analysis. We should take a bow to the film's scriptwriters. The Superman with its overcrowded literature allows no space for newer ideas. However, Zack Snyder manages to have us savoring on his treat, providing us a vivid backstory of Clark's life which is based on the original story itself, has been improvised in detail. Superman pitted against a bunch of his likes, has shown a more humane side of Clark where he has a more grounded image than ever before. The film's most gratifying part comes towards the second half of the film, where the emotional value culminates into an ineffable climax which is packed up with refreshing momentum. The fist-fighting moments in the film are to die for. Though the film challenges a lot of our mythical notions, you should go for it with an open mind and find how rarity isn't hard to introduce if you have strong imagination. A couple of scenes in the film are hard to forget. The most poignant one is when Clark finds himself sinking in a sea of skulls. The characters have purposely been left unspooled and the focus has been shifted to the stories detailing more than the characters. High on emotional value, the effort is perseverant and since mostly impressive. Man of Steel review. Star performances. Henry Cavill as the new cast for Superman does a commendable job. With his eyes doing most of the talking for him, he can fantastically mirror the feelings of character with utmost ease. His face shows gloom impeccably and his action bits are unparalleled. Michael Shannon, however, could have been wasted. Though both Shannon and Russell Crowe commanded delectable prowess over Cavill in the scenes they have with him, in the end both these actors have been wasted. Especially Crowe, who could have been used for longer. Amy Adams looks pleasing but there is no more space left for her in the film. Man of Steel review. Direction, music. Technical aspects. Zack Snyder does an impressive job, refusing to compromise on this film's intrinsic essence. Snyder maintains the drama factor all through, refusing to give way to humor. He very cleverly polishes the script with his smart direction. The editing could have done some major work in the climax, though I am not complaining since the robust action had me floored. The editing would have made the repetitive sequences crisper. David Goyer has aided Snyder on the job quite smoothly. The film's cinematography is top-notch. However, there are pockets when boredom is bound to seep in. If you overlook those parts, the film is worth the watch. Man of Steel review. The last word. Man of Steel definitely glorifies Superman, rendering a magnanimous impression. With very little words, and alluring vigorous action, this time Superman shines in his swanky new mounted scaly suit and presents to us a story which effectively challenges a few prevailing mythical ideas about the character. Snyder's direction is intelligent and Man of Steel, which gives wholesome entertainment despite its hitches, manages to get a 3/5. Go with relaxed expectations and watch this one for sure. Number 6 in the following Man of Steel review. I'm going to try to keep it light on spoilers, as we'll have a more spoiler-filled review later. First, I must give my apologies to Christopher Nolan, Joss Whedon, and Jon Favreau. The Dark Knight, The Avengers, and Iron Man had been sort of in a three-way tie in my mind for best comic book movie ever made. To me, Heath Ledger gave the best performance ever as a villain in The Dark Knight. Robert Downey Jr. gave the best performance ever as a superhero in Iron Man. And The Avengers overall was just a ton of fun. While excellent, each of those three movies were missing just a little something, which is why they were stuck in a three-way tie. However, what those three movies were missing, the Man of Steel found. Man of Steel has broken the tie. It has, for me at least, captured the title of the best comic book movie ever made. And this is coming from someone who has seen every comic book movie ever made. The good and the bad. I still think Nolan, Whedon, and Favreau are great, but Zack Snyder has just raised the bar. Of course, Nolan can take solace in the fact that he helped Snyder raise the bar. As a producer and writer on the film, everything just connects perfectly in Man of Steel. All of the superlatives that Henry Cavill's castmates have dished upon him are 100% deserved. In his first outing as Superman, Henry Cavill has joined the ranks of superheroes that were perfectly cast. He's Warner Brothers' answer to Marvel Studios' casting of Robert Downey Jr. as Iron Man. Henry Cavill is a Superman that Warner Brothers can build a Justice League around. He looks the part, he acts the part, and he completely nails the role in every possible way. While Christopher Reeve will always hold a special place in my heart and the hearts of millions of other fans, Henry Cavill has redefined Superman for a new generation. It's kind of like how Michael Keaton was great in the first two Batman movies, but Christian Bale redefined Batman for the modern era. I remember reading early concerns that Henry Cavill might pull down the movie because he didn't have the experience level of some of the other actors in the film. Anyone who had those concerns should rest easy, because Henry Cavill not only holds his own among several high-caliber actors, but he also delivers an Oscar-worthy performance. Much has been written of Cavill's dedication and hard-working attitude on the set of Man of Steel, and it shows in the movie. Cavill took the role seriously, and he put his heart into it. He gives comic book fans a Superman that they can be proud of. Cavill exceeded every expectation that I had for him in the role. The fact that Cavill shines in Man of Steel is very high praise indeed, when taking into consideration that his fellow castmates also delivered. One of the biggest criticisms of many a superhero movie is that the villains often fail to live up to expectations. There have been some great actors playing superheroes who have never faced a villain truly menacing enough to be their equal. Michael Shannon turns General Zod into the type of villain that is worthy of a Superman. Watching Zod and Superman go head-to-head in Man of Steel is like watching the best two boxers in the world fight. It's like what might have happened if Muhammad Ali and Mike Tyson had somehow been able to step into the ring together when they were both in their prime. Kevin Costner and Russell Crowe are also both brilliant in their roles, playing two very different fathers for Superman. Costner in particular gives his best performance since Dances with Wolves. As much as Cavill defines Superman, Costner defines Jonathan Kent. Costner and Diane Lane as Martha Kent as well really make you believe that two country farmers could find an alien in a field and raise him as their own. Their values and faith are what shape the man that Superman becomes. While there have been some murmurings that the women in the movie might take a back seat to the men in the movie, I personally didn't find that to be the case. While it's true that Superman is the focal point of the movie and his two fathers play an enormous role in the movie, there are some strong female characters in Man of Steel as well. Anjtra gives a deliciously evil performance as Farah. If studios in the past have been reluctant to center movies around female superheroes or female supervillains, then they should just take a look at what Anjtra does in The Man of Steel. She proves beyond a shadow of a doubt that a woman can play just as powerful of a supervillain, or by the same token superhero, in a film as any man can. Amy Adams is also stunning as Lois Lane. While there are instances where she does fall into the damsel in distress role, there are a lot more instances where she performs heroically and moves the plot forward. If not for Lois, I don't think Superman would have followed the path that he follows in the movie. She's the one that helps him believe in the human race. As far as her getting rescued from time to time, Superman rescues almost everyone at one time or another in the film. After all, he's Superman, and he's an equal opportunity rescuer. Even though I haven't mentioned every cast member just to keep this review from becoming even longer, there's not anyone who stands out as giving a bad performance. Overall, the cast of Man of Steel gets an A+. But it's not just the cast that makes Man of Steel the best overall comic book movie ever made. The visuals in the film are stunning. Right from the beginning, I don't think I've ever seen Krypton look so beautiful and mesmerizing. And the fight scenes, they are simply the best superhero fight scenes ever put on film. Nothing else even comes close. If you think you've seen a superhero fight scene in a movie before, just wait until you see Man of the Steel. The fight scenes are intense, brutal, and overwhelmingly destructive. Glancing around at other audience members during some of the fight scenes in the movie, they all had the same jaw-dropping, eyes-wide-open expression that I did. When Zack Snyder did 300, he changed the way that fight scenes are shown in movies. With Man of Steel, he has once again rewritten the rules of how to show fight scenes in movies. There's no slow motion to be seen, it's fast, furious, fist-flying action. And as visually impressive as Man of Steel is to watch, it's also a joy to the ears. There are literally moments in the film where I stopped and thought, wow, this is the most amazing movie soundtrack I've ever heard. If Hans Zimmer doesn't get an Oscar nomination for the Man of Steel soundtrack, it will be a crime worthy of a lifetime of Phantom Zone imprisonment for the Academy members. Visually amazing, beautifully scored, with a stellar cast. I've said it once and I'll say it again, Man of Steel is the best comic book movie ever made. Somehow, Man of Steel takes the best parts of Christopher Nolan's Batman trilogy and Marvel Studios' Avengers movies, and it combines them into one film, while also offering up plenty that is new and different. Man of Steel is a movie that will both make you think and also thoroughly entertain you. While I have intentionally avoided discussing the plot to keep this review spoiler-free, the plot was excellent, and keep checking back, because I will be posting a spoiler-filled plot review soon. I really can't fathom anyone not liking this movie. At the screening I attended, there was plenty of applause, laughter at just the right moments, and people literally ran when they had to get up to go to the bathroom because they didn't want to miss a minute. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if some people peed in their seats just to avoid missing 1 second of the film. For my own part, I avoided drinks going in, because I knew it could be an issue that would lead to a difficult choice. As far as any criticism of the film, it's hard to find any. There are some rather shocking scenes, which are likely to create much discussion among Superman fanboys, but even the likely controversial scenes work amazingly well in the broader scope of the film. If I was forced to say one bad thing about the Man of Steel, the only downside I can come up with is that there was no after-the-credits scene. A large part of the audience sat around through the credits in hopes of seeing a little something extra, but there were only. Number 8. His latest installment in the Superman franchise finds Henry Cavill playing the Man of Steel, figuring out his place on Earth while acknowledging his Krypton origins and battling the evil General Zod. Sex/nudity, Lois and Clark hold hands, flirt and share a couple of kisses. Violence/gore, not much blood and gore, but the mass destruction and body count is high. Buildings burn down and collapse, cars are flattened, and helicopters and planes spin out of control and crash. Lots of hand-to-hand combat and fighting between Superman and General Zod. Both kids and adults are in peril throughout the movie. An entire planet is destroyed, including everyone on it. General Zod and his army plot to kill off all the humans on Earth and re-establish the planet with Kryptonians. Martha Kent is nearly choked to death for information about Clark. A final battle ends with Superman reluctantly breaking someone's neck and showing great remorse. Profanity, one use of F-king, occasional uses of SHT, ass, hell, DCK, a wipe, damn, and crap. At one point, Lois tells two guys, if we're done comparing deeks of broken bar drugs/alcohol, adults consume alcohol at a restaurant, bar. An adult drinks a scotch on the rocks. Which kids will like it? Kids 13 and older who like Superman, superhero comic books and movies, or the DC Universe. Will parents like it? The pacing is a little uneven, but it's a well-done installment in the franchise, and the PG-13 rating is on target. Review: Man of Steel is a great movie for people who don't necessarily know the whole backstory of Superman. It's quite an accomplishment to deliver a movie for both Superman fans and non-fans, and director Zack Snyder is up to the task. We get the necessary amount of explanation to put it all together. The story begins with Superman's birth on Krypton, and we learn that unlike other babies born on that planet who are engineered by a codex to be workers, warriors, leaders or scientists, say baby Kal-El was made the old-fashioned way, by Krypton's head scientist, Jor-El, Russell Crowe, and his wife Lara Alexander. But the planet is in turmoil, and Jor-El is killed during a failed coup by General Zod, Michael Shannon, as Lara launches their newborn son to the distant planet Earth while Krypton implodes in a blaze of explosions. Zod and his crew, however, are banished from the planet, which ultimately saves them. Fast forward 33 years to Earth, where Clark Kent, Henry Cavill, is living a gypsy life, taking jobs here and there, and attempting to hide his special powers, just as his late father Jonathan, Kevin Costner, instructed him. The planet wasn't ready for him, said Jonathan. Still, Clark can't help but save people when the need arises. He saves a school bus full of kids as a youngster, and later, saves men from a burning oil rig and also rescues the fearless Daily Planet reporter Lois Lane. Amy Adams. Clark has been searching for his true identity, and he finds it buried in the glaciers, an ancient Kryptonian scouting ship that has the crew investigating it perplexed, as it settled there before the ice formed. But the same command key that lures Clark's Kryptonian father's ghost also draws Zod and his army. Not good, because Zod is out to kill all humans and repopulate the Earth with Krypton people. For starters, he demands that Superman surrender, forcing the Man of Steel to reveal himself to the government and pave the way for a deadly confrontation between himself and Zod. While I love Zack Snyder's broody take on the Superman story, the pacing seems a little off. Much of the first half of the movie is explanation. Who is Superman? How did he get to Earth? What is he supposed to be doing here? Broken bar as mentioned. We need that explanation, but it seems a bit ponderous at times. Then, much of the second half of the movie is fast-paced action and fighting scenes, with various characters, including Lois Lane and Clark's mother, in peril and fearing for their lives. Still, I love the tone of this film, which is respectful of the Superman legacy, but also blends in light moments here and there, along with an anti-bully story. Clark is kicked around by classmates because he's different, but he doesn't fight back as much as he wants to. An alien story. When you get right down to it, Clark is an alien from another planet, an inner struggle between two worlds. When Clark learns where he's from, he's torn between embracing his Krypton origins and protecting Earth, and an anti-government message. These lawmakers with their endless debates have led Krypton to ruin, exclaims General Zod. The casting is spot on, with Cavill as the dashing, thoughtful and caring Man of Steel, not to mention Studley, Amy Adams as the fearless investigative reporter Lois Lane, Diane Lane as the farm mom who will do anything to protect Clark, and Russell Crowe and Kevin Costner as the two dads who do their best to guide Clark on his journey even from the grave. Also, Christopher Nolan as the stern Colonel Nathan Hardy and Lawrence Fishburne as Perry White. He's perfect as the crotchety editor-in-chief of the Daily Planet. Michael Shannon, who scares me a little, no matter what role he's playing, is perfectly cast as the supervillain General Zod. He's cold-hearted and ruthless, and yet, we know why. He was created to protect and ensure the future of the Krypton people, no matter the cost. I also have to mention Dylan Sprayberry as Clark at 13 years old, and Cooper Timberline as Clark at 9 years old. They both have the perfect look and attitude to believably grow up into Henry Cavill's Clark Kent. Zack Snyder, whose credits include 300, Watchmen, Sucker Punch and the upcoming 300, Rise of an Empire, is a master with high-action, CGI sequences. The good thing is that Man of Steel's PG-13 rating is on target, despite the high body count. Not much blood and gore is shown, making this a good movie for both adults and kids 13 and older, though because it's Superman, I'm sure lots of moviegoers will be younger. At 2.5 hours, Man of Steel runs a bit long and could have used some editing here and there, but the iconic story and action scenes will keep you entertained, for the most part. Some say Man of Steel has a religious undertone. Clark was 33 years old when he became Superman, same age that Jesus died, and he took refuge in a church, where a pastor gave him some wise words. Still, I didn't really get the religious vibe until someone mentioned it later. The ending sets things up nicely for a sequel, and indeed, there's already a Man of Steel 2 in the works, with Zack Snyder at the helm. I'm looking forward to it. Get in your seats early enough to see the great trailers, including Gravity, The Hunger Games, Turbo, Pacific Rim and The Hobbit, The Desolation of Smaug. I'll leave you with a few quotes from Man of Steel. Make a better world than ours, Cal. Laura Van. People are afraid of what they don't understand. Jonathan Kent. You're the answer, son. You're the answer to are we alone in the universe? Jonathan Kent. You just have to decide what kind of man you want to grow up to be, Clark, because whoever that man is, he's going to change the world. Jonathan Kent. Sometimes you have to take a leap of faith first. The trust part comes later. A pastor in a church where Clark takes refuge. Number 9. Necessary though it may be to reinvent Superman's cinematic mythos for a new generation, Man of Steel contains no joy, even if it incorporates much-needed grit and gravitas into the comic book icon. Director Zack Snyder, the visualist behind Sucker Punch and Watchmen, is more interested in perpetuating visual mayhem than strong storytelling or building three-dimensional characters. Snyder relies on the audience's inbuilt knowledge of Superman so he can focus his energies on expensive special effects and surface details, resulting in characters that feel underdeveloped and, therefore, make almost no impression. Produced by the Dark Knight trilogy helmer Christopher Nolan and penned by Batman Begins scribe David S. Goyer, this latest attempt by Warner Brothers to rejuvenate Superman's screen legacy arrives with few pleasures and several bothersome qualities, and never achieves the degree of pure delight or otherwise associated with or expected from the hero. Much like Sony's comparable reboot The Amazing Spider-Man, the film is watchable but without the lights, though it will inevitably launch a profitable new franchise. Now is a great time for superhero films, with filmmakers like Nolan and Joss Whedon deepening classic characters as they spearhead the movement toward grand motion picture filmmaking. And no hero is more instantly identifiable, more commonly associated with epic spectacles, and more pointedly all-American than Superman. And since Richard Donner's 1978 version starring Christopher Reeve is still a gold standard for Superman on film, and Bryan Singer's clumsy reboot Superman Returns failed miserably in 2006, the expectations for a new Superman film series grandfathered by Nolan couldn't be higher. Following Nolan's outstanding Batman films, Man of Steel moves away from the bright primary colors of the original comic created by writer Jerry Siegel and artist Joe Shuster and into deeper colors to reflect the film's more pensive tone. Just look at the new Superman's getup, a burgundy red cape and an almost navy blue bodysuit. Played by chiseled British actor Henry Cavill, Superman and his alter ego Clark Kent are seemingly devoid of personality. Goyer's script may have eliminated the silly standard where Lois Lane somehow never recognizes that her Daily Planet co-worker also happens to be Superman, but all forms of humor or energy have also been removed in the process of elevating the hero into a brooding figure. One, maybe two forgettable comic relief moments bring levity to this otherwise gloomy experience. Snyder and company start from scratch by retelling Superman's origin story. Again, superhero movies have grown far too dependent on origin stories, so much so that today's audiences should never expect their favorite franchise to get beyond a successful trilogy with the same performers who launched it. Take Sam Raimi's Spider-Man or the Dark Knight films. For example, Nolan virtually pioneered the reinvention concept, and thus far, he has yet to be outdone. As you might guess, Man of Steel opens on planet Krypton with a lengthy prologue, beginning with the birth of Kal-El, the first naturally conceived Kryptonian born in their Gatok-like civilization in several hundred years. His father Jor-El, Russell Crowe, a top scientist, predicts the planet's demise to the Council of Leaders who have expended all the planet's resources and refuse to break tradition to save themselves. To violently force a change, the maniacal General Zod, Michael Shannon, attempts to overthrow the council and finds he and his minions damned to the Phantom Zonia, a penalty that exists more as a name than a place we actually see. Only our knowledge of comic lore and Donner's Superman 2 explains what the Phantom Zone is. Meanwhile, Jor-El sends his son to safety on our distant blue ball, and Zod vows revenge. Cut to Cavill's bearded Clark Kent around age 30, having drifted for years from place to place, unable to fit in anywhere and ever careful to hide his super abilities. As he wanders, in flashback, he remembers moments from his picturesque childhood in Smallville, Kansas, where his parents, Kevin Costner and Diane Lane, attempt to imbue their powerful alien son with an appreciation for the fear and frailty in humans and the vastness of his powers. His Earth father suggests he should never reveal himself, as humanity remains unprepared. Young Clark also struggles with adapting to his developing powers. One scene in grammar school finds Clark coping with his X-ray vision and heightened senses, feeling frightened and alienated when he realizes he's different from the other kids. Goyer's script attempts to instill Clark with the humanity imparted to him by his father, but the film never packs the emotional wallop needed to truly bond us to the protagonist on an emotional level. Our reverence of Superman is superficial, based solely on how well Cavill wears the regal suit, and he wears it with dignity, to be sure. Unfortunately, he doesn't do much beyond stand there looking almost ceremonial. Later, CGI takes care of his fast-paced battles. Amy Adams plays Lois Lane in a mildly plucky performance. It's a superb piece of casting wasted on an underwritten character. Lois slowly gathers eyewitness accounts of a mysterious superpowered man for her news piece, which postulates that an alien is hiding out somewhere on Earth. Just as her story breaks online, much to the chagrin of her wooden boss Perry White, Lawrence Fishburne, an alien spacecraft appears in orbit around our planet with an ultimatum issued by its exposition-obsessed commander, General Zod: hand over the one known as Kal-El, or your planet will be demolished. It's a ploy. However, the elitist Zod wants to eliminate the pure-blooded heathen in an act of intergalactic racism and, in the process, find the film's mysterious MacGuffin, the Codex, a crusty, inexplicable skull whose function is ambiguous, to say the least. With Zod's arrival, Superman better understands his origins, but he's also faced with the reality that he's neither wholly Kryptonian nor Earthling when Zod reveals his plans to colonize Earth through genocide. To stop him, our hero teams with the U.S. Armed Forces to create a wormhole or something like that, while Lois joins in the fight, blasting aliens with a laser gun and acting more like a heroic FBI agent than an always-needs-to-be-rescued reporter. While the battles for Smallville, Metropolis, and humanity unfold in a shaky handheld style, the screen story allows for almost no development of the players involved. We know these characters, so they're ingrained in our pop culture awareness, but the film doesn't bother redefining them for the sake of our emotional involvement. Instead, everything's assumed as the plot muddles through predictable and unnecessary situations. Surprising is the amount of time spent on dull Daily Planet intern Jenny, Rebecca Buller, playing a character meant to replace ginger-haired photographer Jimmy Olsen, who's caught under rubble when Metropolis buildings collapse in Zod's 9/11 reminiscent attack, whereas the romance between Lois and Clark garners almost zero screen time. It's shocking that such a crucial element of the Superman story is left barely developed, making their eventual kiss strangely unmotivated. Never do we witness or believe that Lois and Clark have any romantic chemistry, which is necessary for these characters to feel more than one or two-dimensional. This can hardly be blamed on Cavill or Adams. It's really Goyer's script that fails to breathe life into the roles. Cinder has never been much for in-depth characters, so it comes as no surprise that he seems to be asleep in the director's chair during those dramatic, pesky non-action scenes. Conversely, he was evidently overstimulated during the long action sequences where Superman engages Zod's crew with blurred, lightning-fast motions, the scenes choppily edited by David Brenner and assembled with little shot-to-shot logic. Case in point, late in the film, gravity drills threaten to change Earth's atmosphere into a Kryptonian one, which makes Superman ill, a point made clear by Zod's own German-accented mad scientist. Weakened, he somehow defeats the drill's random mechanical arms in a flurry of haphazard images. And then, a moment after the hero realizes he's vulnerable, he's suddenly able to overcome his mechanical opponent, despite his weakened state, without reason or explanation. Sequences such as this are memorable only for how little sense they make. The director would rather concentrate on the visceral nature of the battles, such as Superman and Zod when they devastate countless buildings in Metropolis as they duke it out. No doubt the body count was high as several buildings topple over during the fight, but there's no mention of the imaginable death toll in the aftermath. Perhaps it's best not to complain. At least Snyder has chosen not to repeat his speed-up and slow-down visual effect, established on his debut, the remake Dawn of the Dead, and cemented in 300. Through the action, Hans Zimmer's music is a far cry from the 1978 John Williams score, relying much on electronic sounds over an authentic booming orchestra. As suggested with the remarks above about Cavill and Adams, the cast of Man of Steel is a well-chosen lot working from an ineffectual script. Actors like Fishburne and Crowe serve their purpose by simply standing there and looking their part, while Shannon lends his crazy eyes to give Zod an unhinged quality. Still, there's not much more to the villain than his madness, whereas Shannon usually excels at bringing layers to his complex, often mentally deranged characters. See Take Shelter or My Son, what have you done?" Giving the best performances are Costner and Lane in their down-to-earth, homegrown humanism. Everyone else seems overstated or too understated by comparison. But as mentioned, these are problems with the script and overall vision of the picture, and not necessarily the result of poor performances. On screen almost as much as the supporting actors are incessant and obvious product placements. IOP, Nokia, and Sears make distracting appearances, but then so does a LexCorp tanker, suggesting Superman's unseen arch-nemesis Lex Luthor may have a role in an inevitable future sequel. No single component makes Man of Steel a failure. It's the gradual way in which the aforedescribed qualities compile and, in the end, are unable to evoke awe. This is surprising, given Nolan's presence as producer, the no-expense-spared approach of the production, and the epic-sized 2-hour and 20-minute runtime be a time the audience spends waiting for the proceedings to pick up and get rolling, except they never do. The writer and director somehow make the story feel constrained, as though whole sections of Kal-El's origin story, specifically the parts that make us care about him, have been left on the cutting room floor. And while no one wanted a repeat of the same Superman formulas used in Donner's admittedly corny original, that version at least offered moments of joy and enchantment in the material. Even Nolan's The Dark Knight trilogy contained humor within the exchanges between Bruce Wayne and Alfred or Lucius Fox, bonding us to the characters. But here, all personalities are reduced to mere shells, fragile and cracked when tested. Snyder's film is humorless and flavorless, unmemorable and underwhelming, epic-sized but far from grand. In the end, it's all very average filmmaking, which is far less than what Superman deserves. Number 10. Who is Superman? Is he Kal-El, the last son of Krypton? Or is he Clark Kent, the adopted child of Smallville farmers? Is it even a choice? Can't he both? Superman has been dismissed as the Blue Boy Scout by those who aren't willing to take the time to consider his fascinating origin. He's an immigrant from a destroyed planet. He's the loneliest guy in the world. He's an outsider, and he's humanity's shining beacon even though he's not human. He's the best of both worlds, and arguably belongs to neither. Zack Snyder's Man of Steel tries to get to the heart of this conflict, but ends up missing the heart of Superman. Almost everything that surrounds the character is amazing, from the set pieces to the restructured origin story to the score to the acting to his path before putting on the cape. But inside the iconic suit, there is no Superman. Krypton is about to die, but the world's chief scientist Jor-El, Russell Crowe, has built a rocket for his son Kal-El to travel to Earth. The infant Kal-El is imbued with the planet's codex, which contains all of Krypton's knowledge, in particular the ability to craft the species eugenics. General Zod, Michael Shannon, attempts a coup and tries to get the codex, but is apprehended and sent into the Phantom Zone along with his co-conspirators. Krypton explodes, Kal-El reaches Earth safely, is found and raised as Clark Kent by Jonathan, Kevin Costner, and Martha Kent, Diane Lane, but with the twist that Pa Kent wants Clark to hide his powers for fear the world will reject him. The adult Kal-El, Henry Cavill, eventually discovers his true origin, and then has to fight to protect the Earth when Zod discovers that the last son of Kryptona and therefore the Codex are on our planet. The overarching narrative loosely follows the origin story we all know, but with many welcome twists. Clark's journey is viewed through the prism of his two fathers rather than him going through the standard story beats of Discovery, Fortress of Solitude, join Daily Planet as a cover, and then save the day as Superman. We've seen that so many times before. In this new adaptation, the beats are there, but given far more depth. Most importantly, we see two different belief systems. Jor-El believes that Kal-El should embrace his powers, and become a force of good for Earth to guide our planet to a better tomorrow. Jonathan believes Clark needs to keep his powers a secret in order to stay safe or else humanity will reject him. But all of this conflict happens around the adult Kal-El/Clark Kent. He's a wanderer and a superpowered good guy who can fight off superpowered bad guys. But the conflict that's presented is two teachings rather than an inner conflict we see on screen. He's given a purpose and a suit by Jor-El, but the uncertainty is with Clark. The suit doesn't bring certitude. It doesn't bring anything. There's no nobility, no joy, no humility, nor any of the personality traits we associate with Superman. His guard is up so high that we can't see any growth behind the emotional wall he's constructed. A shy, concerned Superman is interesting to a point, but if this is an origin story, we need to see how Kal-El/Clark emotionally fights and reconciles the conflicting ideologies of his fathers. Instead, the only fights we see are physical. I will say that these fights are spectacular. They are truly a wonder to behold, and unlike anything you've ever seen on screen. Snyder has taken an understanding of Superman's physical abilities and attempted to test them in a way that's convincing and exciting. Furthermore, Snyder does it without his trademark and tired speed ramping. He's fighting alongside the character rather than trying to eclipse him. When it comes to sheer action, these are the battles that Superman deserves. Although the 3D adds absolutely nothing, however, these battles lack any emotional weight and eventually become exhausting. They don't tell us anything about Superman's personality or development. That doesn't mean the fight needs to take an intermission so that Kal-El can have an emotional breakthrough. But these set pieces are completely devoid of any character moments for our hero. For example, a fight along Smallville's Main Street has plenty of smashing, and Superman trading blows with Zod's compatriot Farah and Trey, but it doesn't tell us anything new about Superman, and it doesn't develop his character. We never see a moment of Kal-El having even a semblance of a revelation that would bring him one step closer to the hero we know and love. Even outside of the action scenes, the story struggles to push Superman forward. Zod is presented as a rejection of the choice Kal-El/Clark has to make. For Zod, who, like most Kryptonians, was genetically engineered into his profession, as opposed to Kal-El, who was the first natural birth in centuries, a new Krypton must be built on eugenics. Whether Kal-El chooses to reject his purpose or take a chance on humanity, we know he's never going to consider Zod's option of wiping out humanity to make room for Kryptonians. Kal-El may be rejected by humans, but he'll never destroy them. Furthermore, despite Jonathan's warning, we don't really see a hint of humanity's rejection. At most, we see paranoia from the military, but it's the military, and it's their job to be paranoid. The American military doesn't represent all of humanity, and Clark mostly interacts with individuals as opposed to a faceless mob. Lois Lane, Amy Adams, is a fine human being, but there's never any chance she'll reject him. The story does a wonderful job of redefining her character to not only show her journalistic abilities, rather than just tell us she's a good journalist, but also makes her a central figure in the plan to save Earth from Zod. There's also the chemistry we've come to expect from Lois and Clark, and it develops in a way we've never seen before. Clark's experience with humans is pretty common, mostly good people, but there are also some jerks. But the people from his childhood don't know him as Superman, and we never learn what anyone outside of Lois and his parents think of him. Even in his big battle in Metropolis, there's hardly anyone to look up and discern if the object above is a bird or a plane. This inability to make the conflict hit at the heart of Superman as a person is so damned frustrating because everything that surrounds him on a technical and emotional level is beautiful. Crowe and Costner are deeply moving as two fathers who only want the best for their son. As the young Clark Kent, Dylan Sprayberry captures the fear, anger, and heartbreak of someone who knows he's always going to be an outsider and struggle to find his place in the universe. The film cuts back and forth between Clark's past and the present, which is absolutely necessary in order to prevent the film from getting bogged down in exposition, but it also shows how Clark has become guarded to the point of not having much a personality. He's the blue Boy Scout but without the smile. The only time it peeks through is during his first flight, and we witness the pure joy and exhilaration on Superman's face. It's a wonderful moment, and it's sadly absent from most of the picture. Our enchantment comes from what's happening on a technical level. Krypton is absolutely gorgeous, and as I watched what was happening, I had trouble imagining how Snyder could ever recapture the experience of complete and total awe once we were on Earth. Krypton is a sci-fi fantasy like no other. Liquid metal flows through the technology while the world collapses from above and below. Spaceships zoom through the air alongside winged beasts. And it's not just eye candy. All of it is anchored by the conflict between Jor-El and Zod. The events on Krypton don't overshadow the movie because its essence permeates the rest of the picture. We see it in Zod and his comrades. We see it in the design of Superman's suit, which blends the details of Krypton with the bright colors of Earth. And most of all, we hear it in Hans Zimmer's astoundingly gorgeous score. There is no competition between Zimmer's work and what John Williams did with earlier Superman films because it's not a matter of one being better than the other. They're both perfectly suited to the story being told. Zimmer's music brings us perfectly through Clark's melancholy, Jonathan's concerns, Jor-El's hopes, and Superman's brawls. So much care and devotion has been brought to create the world of Superman, and Superman isn't there. It's a big, expensive party, and the guest of honor hasn't shown up. Snyder's take hasn't corrupted or disrespected the character. This isn't a careless adaptation as much as it's a misguided one. Superman isn't easy. Snyder and screenwriter David S. Goyer try to find the hero in his fathers, in a character caught between two worlds, in a realistic take about an alien hiding amongst humans. And as long as Superman isn't on screen, they've succeeded on an emotional level. Trying to find depth outside of the hero is important, but Superman is supposed to be the realization of all the hard work that's gone into his past. He's supposed to be the product of hopes, fears, triumphs, and downfalls, but it only adds up to someone who can leap tall buildings in a single bound. When Lois asks Kal-El what the S emblem stands for, he responds that it's not an S. He says on Krypton, it means hope, but in Man of Steel, it's a symbol without a Superman. Number 11. Perhaps no 2013 movie has been more hyped or more scrutinized prior to its release than Man of Steel. Maybe it's the talent that's been assembled both in front of and behind the camera. Maybe it's the heartfelt desire of fanboys like me for a good quality Superman movie during this current age of superhero cinema. Whatever it is, Man of Steel seems destined to disappoint on some levels for some. Well, it's finally arrived, and for me it didn't disappoint even though it's a film that I needed to digest first. This is certainly a different Superman movie than any of the others that we've seen, which means it will definitely have to dodge its share of criticisms. Some will surely have issues with the different tone of this film, and others will struggle with the creative liberties that do strip the picture of some of the things that the other Superman movies leaned heavily on. But when looked at as a clearly distinct Superman picture, I feel it holds up quite strongly on its own. I certainly don't want to discount the problems others may have with the film, but I think it's a movie that offers a unique vision laced with fun summer action while also showing a level of respect for the source material. David Goyer and Christopher Nolan put together the story, and the directing reins were handed to Zack Snyder. Their Superman universe starts by placing us into a crumbling planet Krypton. It's a vision of the planet unlike any we've seen before, and we get some interesting doses of their society, political structure, and more importantly the danger they're facing. Due to some ill-advised planetary resourcing, Krypton is on the verge of destruction. Understanding his planet's fate, Jor-El, wonderfully played by Russell Crowe, and wife Lara Alexander, shoot their infant son Kal off the planet destined for Earth. With him is a codex which will ensure the survival of the Kryptonian race. We also meet the megalomaniacal rebel General Zod, Michael Shannon, an old friend of Jor-El's whose more violent solutions for survival seriously clash with the society. From there the movie jumps ahead 30 Earth years or so. Kal-El, Henry Cavill, now named Clark, is a wanderer who works as everything from a crab fisherman to a truck stop waiter. Along the way he has left behind numerous stories of his superhuman heroism. Now the tale of his arrival on Earth is familiar enough, and the film doesn't waste a lot of time going back over it. As a baby he's found by Ma and Pa Kent, Diane Lane and Kevin Costner, and raised on their farm in Kansas. We see glimpses of his childhood through a series of very effective flashbacks. I have to say I love this approach, and each jump back into Clark's past offered an interesting look at the different struggles and hardships he faced. Costner and Lane both give fabulous performances and inject some real emotion into the story. As you probably guessed, Zod and his followers track Kel to Earth and seek him out, hoping to regain the Codex and restore Krypton in their own genocidal way. It's here that Clark must either embrace the destiny set before him and protect his new home, or watch the human race be destroyed at the hands of his fellow Kryptonians. Through this we get a lot of mulling and conversation about whether or not the human race is ready to accept a super alien species. That's soon tested after Clark saves the life of the spunky Lois Lane, Amy Adams, who insists on finding out more about her hero. This Lois Lane is quite different than the versions we've come to know, and this leads to one issue that I know some will have with the film. There's a wild inversion of events that takes place in Man of Steel that definitely affects the relationships between Lois and Clark. For me, their romance has always been a crucial function that makes his whole story work. Because of the chronological tinkering, I found their romance to be lacking, but it isn't completely ineffective. Adams gives a nice performance, it's just that her Lois feels so different than others. She's also much more out of the element that we're used to seeing her in. Overall, it didn't seriously bother me, but it didn't always feel right. While the Lois character may have raised questions, I had none when it came to Michael Shannon's Zod. From his first moments on screen he comes across as unstable and menacing. Shannon goes after it, and I never doubted him for a second. I also really liked Aunt Trasfara, Zod's loyal second-in-command. She's dry and super serious, and she perfectly complements Shannon's performance. In movies like this it's crucial to have a strong villain, and Shannon brings that. Many of my favorite scenes feature him, and none are better than when he makes his first appearance on Earth. I've mentioned many of the performances, but the real question mark for me was Henry Cavill. Could he capture the Man of Steel in a convincing way? The answer is yes. I liked Cavill here. I do think he's helped by the screenplay, which rarely asks him to do too much. But during the small scenes where he's needed to exhibit some range he succeeds. This was a big deal because a poor performance from him could have derailed the entire production. Cavill has the look, the physicality, and the commitment to sell the character. There's no denying that Man of Steel sports a much more serious tone, and it lacks the light-hearted playfulness of the other movies. This has proven to be a hurdle that some just can't get over. In many ways I welcome it. Man of Steel gives us a much more serious Superman story, but it's not without its share of funny moments. It just chooses to spend its time delving into some things we've rarely seen in the other films. I appreciated that, and it's one of the key things that keeps this from feeling exactly like every other Superman movie we've been given. And of course you can't talk about Man of Steel without getting into the action sequences and special effects. This is where Zack Snyder's fingerprints really show up. The film looks fantastic, and it features some really fun science fiction. Everything, including the spaceships, Zod and his crew's wicked armor and air mask apparatus, that destruction of buildings and vehicles. It all is beautifully crafted and realized by Snyder's keen stylistic eye. And we see that eye at work a lot in this film. There is a ton of action here, but most of it is pulled off to great effect. Snyder shows off his effects with skill, except for in the big finale. It's here that about 5 minutes of crumbling buildings alone could have been left on the cutting room floor, and the movie would have been better for it. So how do I summarize all of this? Amid Man of Steel's booming action sequences and sky-high expectations lies a very good Superman reboot that I think shines in its uniqueness. Yes, a few of its directional choices don't work as well as I would have liked, and the final action sequence can be a bit numbing, but this has all the ingredients of being a franchise I can latch onto. I also appreciate that it steered the material away from cartoony and ventured to give us a more stern and grounded story, and I like that it brings the character back from the waste that Bryan Singer left him in. Man of Steel gives us someone bound by morals and committed to truth and justice. In other words, Man of Steel gives us Superman. All of this led to an experience that I found most satisfying, and I'm anxious to see what lies ahead for this franchise. Number 12. The infant Kal-El is rocketed away from his doomed planet, Krypton, which explodes. He gets sent to Earth, where he is found by Jonathan and Marco Kent. He grows up feeling alone and isolated, but through his parents, he has an optimistic viewpoint on life and good morals, as well as having powers he simply doesn't understand. After his father dies of a stroke, he moves to Metropolis where he hopes to find some semblance of purpose. It's during this time where General Zod, a being from his home world, finds out the son of Jor-El, the man who imprisoned him in the Phantom Zone on Krypton, is on Earth. So, he tries to build a new Krypton while also taking vengeance on the man who imprisoned him through Kal-El. The Man of Steel is the only thing in between Zod and Annihilation. Reception: Man of Steel received universal acclaim from critics and audiences. Brad Bird and Superman were a match made in heaven. Arguably the greatest Superman movie to date, rivaling the original 1978 film. Many praised the performances, writing, effects, music, pacing, and modernization of the Superman story, while also keeping the touch of the original comics with its themes of hope and virtue. Trivia: while Guillermo del Toro turned down the chance to direct Man of Steel due to his commitments with At the Mountains of Madness, he soon directed the sequel Man of Steel 2, Enter the Night. After Legendary Pictures turned down his pitch for At the Mountains of Madness, he ultimately took the job because he was very impressed with Bird's direction for Man of Steel. After a long dubious process of trying to find the perfect Superman, Bird ultimately chose Cavill because when he put on the replica of Christopher Reeve's suit from Superman, the movie, Bird stated he just looked right. Many directors were considered to direct the first film in Zod, but Brad Bird was chosen to direct the film due to his previous film The Iron Giant, showcasing many similarities to the Superman character, and referencing him several times throughout the film. Number 13. Every reboot needs a beginning, so with the reboot of Superman, Man of Steel shows the origins of the Man of Steel from birth. The movie starts out with his mother screaming in throes of childbirth, to him becoming, indeed, Superman, and saving the world. It does this fairly well and makes it rather exciting, but it suffers from the same thing that The Great Gatsby seemed to suffer from. Both are about 2 hours 20 minutes, great first 90 minutes, lackluster final 50 minutes. In this film we see Clark Kent struggle internally between doing what's right and doing what he wants. Even in the trailer when a young Superman asks his father, "What did you want me to do, just like them die?" and his father responds, "Maybe," you see the pain of the possibility of allowing the mere mortals of Earth to perish in order to conceal one's identity. This plays a pivotal role throughout his development. The characters and actors are great. Henry Cavill as Superman was an excellent choice and he's surrounded by high-quality actors. Michael Shannon knocks it out of the park as General Zod, despite a few moments of overacting, and the supporting players pull their weight. Russell Crowe and Kevin Costner are great at playing the dads we all wish we had, and Ma Kent, Diane Lane, is good as well. Amy Adams and Lawrence Fishburne were fine, forgettable. But pay attention to an actress named Aunt Stray. She plays the evil sidekick to General Zod and kicks some serious butt. Once Zod reappears into Superman's world, the holes in the story start widening and things start to cliché told to copyright. Brilliant scientists are extra brilliant at figuring out what's going on. The military is extra stubborn and pays the consequences for their naivety. It felt that the story started to revolve around action scenes as opposed to the story being the cause for action. But the action scenes, for the most part, were good, only they too got stale. There's just too much of the same action and I felt I've seen it before. Two foes battle each other in the center of a metropolis, which so happens is Metropolis in this one. The Incredible Hulk, Avengers, Spider-Man, Transformers. I've seen it already. Why directors feel the need to use the handheld to add realism escapes me. It's an overdone practice and it's distracting. We're not watching a documentary. We're watching a $200 million summer blockbuster. I want to see what's going on, not pretend the filmmakers came across it. So, in the end it gets a 3 out of 5 from me. I'd like to see most of the actors again reprising their roles, and I don't believe this one will get pushed aside like the previous Superman Returns. Superman movies usually aren't very good if you think about it. The last quality one had the same battle between General Zod and Superman and was made in 1980. Christopher Nolan was a major producer on this one as well as credited for the story. He and David S. Goyer did the script. I just wish they could have woven it together in a way that held the same caliber as their Batman trilogy. To me, Man of Steel was just another comic book movie, one that's almost forgettable.